Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone can see the slides, right? Everyone sees Henry in the tunnel, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Should we sync up the start of our Audacity files, or just like?
Nah, I can do that from
Fuck
the
him. He
OBS
can do it
recording.
himself.
Okay.
That's right.
Well, I am starting my audio when you hear me say I am starting my audio.
Well,
Okay.
likewise, that is what I have been doing. So
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I
Cool.
just started recording, so.
yeah, I've been recording.
Oh, yeah, same.
Okay.
Yeah, I look forward to giving Rods inexplicable amounts of noise, bag crackles, really
Yeah,
selling.
lots of bag crackling going on right now.
Oh,
yes.
are you jealous? I got Andy Cap's hot fries, dude. So
Very
45
nice.
minutes into this podcast, I'm going to have what I can only describe as explosive diarrhea.
Cool.
Very nice. I just took an extremely nasty number 2 right before we started
Did
recording.
Did you?
Yes.
Oh, how goes living in an excavation site?
Oh, well. Very nice.
Okay.
Welcome to the bonus episode, everyone.
Is this a
Where we
bonus?
burp.
Yeah. You thought we would like inflict this on them for free? No, they have to pay for this kind of degradation.
Oh,
Yeah.
How do I go full screen? Okay, there we go.
So, welcome to the bonus episode. You probably already know who we are, and there's some bag crackling going on.
that's
that's
you
Liam.
may not know who Tom is. Tom, say hello.
Hello?
Okay.
Is that
Why
right?
do you sound like you're being held hostage, Tom?
I am being treated well by my captors.
This podcast was not recorded under duress, and
Oh, let me get you the keys. Sorry, my fiance is heading out. Let me get her
Okay.
one set of keys we have for our car.
bye sign.
He said bye.
Later.
Can I? Oh yeah, can I have the slides? Did you give me the slides?
Yeah, we do not have the slides.
We don't have the
Oh, my
slides.
God.
You asshole.
Yeah,
Alright,
you know what we
hold
need
on.
to do this
Slides.
podcast is the
Slides.
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 The slides.
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 I gotta find this now.
How's it going to work with the video syncing?
Badly.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't worry about it. As somebody
You asked too many questions, Tom.
yeah, that's right. Somebody on the fucking the Q&A said they thought it was really impressive that we managed as a podcast to have a shit ton of crosstalk and a shit ton of dead air, and that's exactly the production value I
I
aspire
feel like
to.
you should have used
Yes.
the Steam logo here.
Oh, that would have been smart. No,
Actually,
I
I've
like,
got some jokes about how
what-
the Epic Game Store is really the platform of the future, and
Yeah. Here, I've
So
got my
that's
epic.
right, okay.
I've got my Epic Game Store joke here, which is that the Epic Game Store would have been a really funny thing to call Steam in like
what the fuck was that
2013.
noise?
I don't know. I assume like Justin getting murdered or something. Justin, were you
I
getting
have no
murdered?
idea what that was. I was not getting murdered,
Mm.
Oh,
to
thank
my
God.
knowledge, unless this is the afterlife. I don't know.
Oh, you poor you just still live in West Philly.
Yeah.
Mariposa,
So-
however, only has red pepper flakes, nothing else.
Oh my God. The ironic punishment department. All right. So today, what we're going to do on this bonus episode is we're going to talk about steam locomotives. Is everyone's excited, right?
Both me
yes.
and Liam have been awake for like 72 to 86 hours,
Oh yeah,
and so like
I am excited to hear about steam locomotives as somebody who I really got to get Henry's face off my screen. This is look how sad he is.
It's okay.
I
It gets
like-
weirder. It gets weirder later.
He should have
buddy,
left the tunnel.
you know, that's how I feel whenever I go from West Philly into Center City.
Just
Should've left the
coming out of the L.
Just like, oh boy,
Oh, boy.
I'm afraid. Where's the Ethiopian food? What's happening to me? Where am I? Yes, I am very delighted to hear about Steam, and I can only assume Origin
Yes.
and the Epic Games Store
mhm.
Yes.
and
Yes,
BattleNet.
See,
Very-
learning
various-
about the Dampflok.
All right.
People,
Learn me about trains, Roz.
1, 2, 3. Come on, go. Okay, hold on. So what Tom has done is provided us with nice animations
Oh.
to explain.
Tom,
how
did you just
steam locomotives
impose
work.
fucking production values on our shitty podcast? How dare you?
Yes.
This is a betrayal of the brand.
So this is Cumberland Valley Railroad number 13, the Pioneer, which we're just going to use for sort of the overview of what is steam locomotive. And as we said in the DMs earlier, it's a series of tubes.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like the internet. So there's like major components of it. You have, your boiler, which is the big bluish gray thing. You have your firebox, which is the big square thing with all the rivets on it. We're going to talk a lot about rods and valve gear, specifically something called an eccentric, which, if you don't know what that is, if you're watching the podcast, take a coin. If you were to imagine you punch a hole off center through it and then stick a pencil through it and turn it, it will sort of revolve in a way that if you then put a hoop around that, you can convert rotational motion into linear motion.
This is a sort of spatial reasoning test for those of you to punish you for not watching the YouTube and getting us closer to having the little cool plaques. What you're instead getting is a sort of
thought experiment.
Yeah, what you're getting is an SAT module about how a railroad works.
Right. So I guess like more basic concepts, like what's the difference between a steam engine and a steam locomotive? A steam engine is just like the cylinders and rod setup that moves something. A steam locomotive is sort of the package deal. You have your boiler to provide heat for it, and it's carried on a platform which is on wheels. So it's all a self-contained thing rather than separate entities. Little brief overview. We classify locomotives, steam locomotives specifically, using something called the White system, which counts the number of wheels based on what kind of wheels they are. So this locomotive Pioneer is a 2-2-2, meaning it has 2 small pilot wheels in front, which carry weight, 2 driving wheels in the middle, which actually provide tractive force, and then 2 trailing wheels in back, which additionally carry weight. And in this case, it's a tank engine, so we would call it a 2-2-2-T.
And also, I should add, the higher the number of those numbers in the White system, the more of those numbers is 0, the funnier the train looks.
Yes.
I'm a huge fan of a 0-2-0, which is just...
That's just a segue.
Yeah.
A vertical boiler steam segue.
Very sophisticated computer system to keep it up, right? But it's still a steam train. Yeah.
Alice, what if I told you there is an 020 in this podcast somewhere?
Oh shit! All right,
like someone actually built one. Yeah. Did we do the introduction yet?
We're simply not doing that.
Okay.
Nobody knows who you are. So if you want to be like, hi, I'm Tom Colassi.
Yeah. I told you to say hi before, and then you
simply said
hi.
You were just
I choked.
What's up?
Yeah. I'm. The other 3. I'm Tom Coletti. My pronouns are he, him. I do a lot of weird, odd jobs that require knowledge of steam locomotives. Like I paint them. I do photo restoration of them. I do building and restoring of brass models of them. So none of them are real jobs, but they all require the knowledge I'm going to try to share with you today. So that's why I'm here.
Tom was also in the elevator video.
Yes.
The one you're allowed to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the one where you doxed me.
We didn't do it on purpose, to be fair.
I know. It's just the elevator slips have the address on them, which that thing expired earlier this year. It hasn't been re-inspected yet. That'll be fun.
Very nice.
Oh, good.
Shit.
So we've learned sort of the general sort of conceptual stuff. Let's learn how a steam locomotive actually works.
Make steam hot push thing.
Spicy rocks.
Okay.
Is it spicy rocks?
Yeah. So this is a cutaway model. As Justin said on episode 8 of Franklin before, a steam locomotive runs on water and heat. In this case, the heat is provided by a fuel source, in this case, wood, which burns in a firebox, which is a sheath of metal inside the boiler. And between those two walls, you have water, which the heat goes through the firebox metal into the water and boils it and creates steam. The hot gases from the fire exhaust also goes through a series of flues through the boiler. That's those horizontal lines going from the firebox to the front. And then that exhaust goes up the stack. The additional heat from the flues helps to create more heating surface rather than just a direct heating surface from the fire. Inside the boiler, that heated steam is what's called saturated steam. In later locomotives, they would heat it again, and that would create superheated steam. But in this case, we have a saturated locomotive, so the steam's going to be fairly wet with condensation, but it gets drier usually the further away from the water line. That's why you collect the steam in a steam dome, so that if water level increases or it foams over, you're not going to get water into your cylinders. Otherwise, you'll just hydraulic them and blow a cylinder head out. But then the steam goes, when the throttle is open, it's collected from the steam dome through the dry pipe into what's called a steam chest. And inside there is a valve which goes back and forth and directs steam to either one side of the piston or the other based on the position of the wheels and rods. And so as the steam opens to one valve, it pushes the piston back. And as it gets to the end of the stroke, the valve gear will move the valve to the other side and allow the steam to push it the other way. And on the back end of each stroke, you have in black, the steam exhaust is collected and put through an exhaust port. That black then mixes with the orange of the fire exhaust, and both go up the stack, and that helps to pull on the draft of the locomotive and helps the fire burn hotter, helps it create more steam. The cycle continues. Now on these old wood burners as well, you'll notice there's a lot of spark and cinders being thrown off from the wood fire. That is collected in a smokestack. This is a Wild West engine, so it has a big balloon stack with a conical baffle and spark arresters in there, and that helps to catch the ash and cinders so they don't just shoot out in the field and set everything on fire.
Nothing's fun anymore. You're not allowed to just burn down the countryside either side of the railroad.
Right. Just like 30 miles an hour, just you're your own traveling fireworks show.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, people still burn the country down. They just do it based on what genitals their kid has, which is kind of dumb.
Didn't one of the narrow gauge railroads out in Colorado just cause a major wildfire?
Yeah, the Durango and Silverton, and because of that, they're converting all of them to oil firing.
Oh,
I agree with the choice. It's much easier on a fireman's back if he could work an atomizer rather than shoveling coal all day. Let workers be comfortable, Roz.
Counterpoint: oil-fired locomotives are bourgeois decadence.
It's true.
Oh.
You need the
shoveling,
the real proletarian aspect to it of shoveling. That's how you put people like Jeremy Clarkson in their place.
Look, not breaking your back every day is champagne socialism.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
If you are not a completely broken man by the age of 32, you're that's bourgeois decadence.
That's usually about how long firemen lasted.
Some PMC
just doubled
shit
over
right
at 35. When I served the proletariat,
the two foundational texts of my politics: state and revolution in 16 tons.
Yes.
Oh, I just remembered one last thing to get from this diagram is that as you are converting water to steam and using it, your boiler will start to deplete its water supply. So you need a way to put water into the boiler. This is usually difficult because the boiler is pressurized. Early locomotives like this use something called a crosshead pump, and that is what's between the tender cistern and the firebox. Basically, it is a plunger on an eccentric with a pair of one-way valves, which are just a ball bearing on a seat. And so as the plunger is pulled out, it draws water in from the tender. As it pushes forward, the lower valve closes and the upper valve lifts, and that allows you to push water into the boiler. You have a small plunger pushed by, the power from a larger piston. So, the hydraulics rules or whatever, it allows you to use a big force to push a little thing to overcome that boiler pressure. And that's how that works.
That works.
Yeah.
All right.
And it worked for a long time.
Have you heard of my IRA political strategy? The bullet and the firebox.
Oh boy.
Thank you.
Yes.
That at least Alice laughed. That's all I need. Low effort comedy, baby.
Well, listen, we're the two extremely sleep deprived ones, so of course the comedy stylings are going to work for me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This very serious train podcast is getting derailed.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a total train wreck.
Shut up, Roz. How many of your bad jokes have I laughed at? Hundreds, if not thousands.
I've audibly groaned to like a joke that Justin put in like a actual video on his channel.
I've done that. Yeah. Sometimes I see jokes that like he and I came up with and just like bantering back and forth, like that Alexander Hamilton was a big dumb idiot asshole. And I'm just like, I'm not as funny as I think I am, huh?
So that's how steam locomotives work. We should talk a little bit about sort of the long and arduous journey of how we got there.
Steam was invented in 1974 by Jonathan Steam.
Yes.
I was going to say Edwin Steamus, but yeah.
No.
One of the earliest ones is like the Romans came up with what's his Hero of Alexandria invented the Aeolipile. Aeolipile, whatever it's called. It's like
yeah, he invented that.
Yeah. And the Oompa Loompas separately, totally separately. Weird guy.
Well, I mean, the Romans did like their slaves.
He invented the ball with the tube on it.
Yeah, the ball
which
with the
you
tube
used as like a novelty to like open temple doors, because apparently like Roman temples were just fully on some Disneyland shit.
Yes.
Just thinking about Disneyland now, ever since like the pre-show discussion where we just started talking about Disneyland, I'm just like, man, should do a show about Disneyland.
I wasn't there for that. I mean, Disneyland opening day is an engineering disaster. You could totally talk about it.
Yeah. Shit. Do I do the notes or just Tom do the notes? Because Tom did all the slides because I didn't do shit.
I'll do it. This is my week.
This is Tomcast.
Yeah,
this is the Tomcast.
So steam was in Roman times, a novelty was, oh, look at this funny ball spin. And then they sort of left it at that until the early 1700s when Thomas Newcomen and James Watt started using low pressure steam engines to pump water out of mines. And that is the picture right next to it.
What technologies do we have right now that we're just using for novelty purposes that in 200 years people are going to be like, yo, they were fucking idiots for not using this?
There's
the
like
internet.
The
internet. There's so much fucking space wasted on the internet for just like every frame of every SpongeBob episode that they just upload in order.
Yeah, they use this to make podcasts.
Storage is cheap, Tom.
Up those fryers.
Those little novelty lights where you get the plasma lights you can stick your hands on and then it like jumps to your hand. That's gonna cure cancer somehow. I can feel it.
Magic eye books.
Yeah. But if you just look past the picture,
that's right,
you can see a bird. and that will get us to Saturn or Europa.
100%.
And so God, now I know how Roz feels every time he does this. This is tough.
You just gotta charge over people.
It's okay. Yeah. I don't have charts. I have moving wizard pictures, so we're good. So steam was a stationary object for a very long time. Eventually in the 1700s, they also had the idea, sort of as they were developing it for stationary purposes, what if we use this to power a vehicle? And in, I believe, 1769 or 1770, the French decided to build this big, stupid steam cart. And I want to know if you all can see what's wrong with this design.
Oh, oui, oui.
Where do you put the bayonet?
Yeah.
How you say how to add the cannon to
well, theoretically you could put one on the back, but ideally that's where the boiler should have been. It was cantilevered over the steering wheel, and you could see them trying to turn it, It turns out it did not turn, and it just crashed right through a wall. They did not bother with this anymore. It didn't have a proper crank or anything. It just ran on a ratchet system, which meant that in addition to not being able to steer it, it's just throwing you forward and back constantly.
Nice.
While you're trying to stand up and steer this horrible contraption.
No, it looks tight. I like
just
the 3 wheels.
It looks like every guy who got an Instant Pot for Christmas and is like, look at all the shit I can make with this. And
this is what they used to blow up the Boston Marathon. That makes so much sense.
The guy on the crank is an FBI agent.
I hate to rat out my roommate, but my roommate Megan, who's not here to defend herself, asked Corinne, my girlfriend, what would happen? Like, what happens if an Instant Pot basically is left unattended and the steam builds up? And Corinne had to be like, it's a bomb. They use that to blow up the Boston Marathon. And I just So this
what
is just
happens is there's a safety valve.
Listen,
that wasn't invented yet. That was not invented yet.
I'm sorry, Ross. Take another look at this picture. You tell me if there's a safety valve.
The safety valve is one French man.
That guy's doing this in breeches.
Yeah, the safety valve is we kill the person who might try to build another one. And so another problem with these,
the safety valve is the guillotine. Yes, there we go.
Another problem with a lot of road vehicles is, oddly, a lot of the first steam vehicles that they try to build were made for roads. The problem with that is roads were shitty at this time. There were horse-drawn tramways, but they didn't really think to combine the two, steam vehicles and horse-drawn tramways, until, next slide, this guy, Richard Trevithick.
He was startled.
Yeah,
that's just how Victorians were.
It took this guy 10 hours to have his portrait painted, and he looks like someone just peeled back a shower curtain on him. I didn't see you come in there, guy who's been standing in my foyer all day.
His exact expression is, "You seeing this shit?"
He's like, "Hey, look over there.
Where am I?"
And so Richard Trevithick, Cornishman, got really interested in the idea of building steam vehicles, and he knew that he had to use high pressure steam. You could stick on this for a bit, because a lot of the early steam engines that were built were low pressure steam, because James Watt specifically thought that high pressure steam was too dangerous, that it could blow up. And Richard Trevithick,
based on conservative ideas, it's a bad idea to ride around on a bomb.
Right.
Yeah. So the first engine he built was a stationary engine. I haven't pictured that here because it's not a big development beyond what Thomas Newcomen and James Watt built. But he started building the first thing, which is just below his portrait, the Puffing Devil, which is another road vehicle.
It was the first thing to vape.
Yes.
Get it? You vape as you're crushing school children underneath? Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of Trevithick's work infringed on James Watt's patents, one of which was the crank. Just a crank.
You just patented a
kick. Yeah, no, James Watt was the first patent troll. Crank. He's a fucking dick. But when people tried to go after Trevithick to tell him, "Hey, stop infringing on James Watt's patents," he apparently tied him up and suspended him over a mine shaft.
Excuse me.
Copy left.
And so they stopped bothering him after that. They're like, "Okay, do your shit. That's fine." Jesus,
just holding an ivory-handled revolver to someone's head, talking about right to repair.
I like this guy.
Yeah, Richard Trevithick was a cool dude, and so he built the Puffing Devil 1801. Drove it down a country
Devil.
lane.
What a name! That's what they called me back in college.
Steam locomotives have some cool names: Puffing Devil, Leviathan, Whirlwind.
Yeah, when I think badass name, I think Mallard, the duck.
Oh no, they get dumber. There was some Cock of the North, Uncle Dick.
I kind of like Uncle
Dick. Real name of a steam locomotive. Look it up. And so he went down a country lane at 3 miles an hour. It was shaking like hell. you could watch videos of the replica they built, and the person trying to steer it is just getting jostled violently the whole time. But yeah, it worked. And so we went to a pub to celebrate, and while they were celebrating, it blew up. Just like everyone said,
just chilling and like no more of that.
Yeah, but he was like, okay, I'm going to build another one. What am I going to do differently? Well, I'm going to put it on a motor carriage, and I'm going to make these big, like 9-foot tall wheels because the state of London's roads were terrible. And so that was meant to like get over potholes and conduits. It didn't steer well, crashed into a garden fence.
He invented big mud tires.
Yes.
Yep. Big mud tires. Big mud tires.
Just trying to get to work anywhere within London was mudding.
how much things have changed.
Yeah, it's like when they paved Pikes Peak. It's just not the same.
It's fine. It's fine. Remember, hug the apex, kids. Hug that apex.
and so like, and then another thing to talk about with these engines is that usually only like, some of the wheels were powered. The boilers themselves were very primitive. They had the cylinders actually tucked away inside them, and then just sort of bolted a vehicle around it. It was a single flue, so you only had a place to put coal in. It goes through one pipe, and then out the stack. Was not very thermally efficient. But then after his 1802 steam bus failed, he decided, okay, well, what am I doing wrong? And then he has the idea, what if I combine the steam vehicle with the guided tramways that they're already using in, coal mines and stuff already? And so he builds the first locomotive on a guideway that we would recognize today. And this is an animated model I made of it. You can see it's very primitive. It uses a weird gear system and a flywheel since there's only one cylinder in order to prevent it from bottoming out at one end. And the way that the valves work is that there's only a single valve in there that just directs steam either to one side of the piston or the other. And the crosshead has these little tappets on the valve rod. And at the end of the stroke, it just taps that and changes the valve and pushes the cylinder back. And it's very simple. Not very efficient, but it's something that one person was able to build and just sort of get running to prove the concept. And you'll notice the track that it's running on is very weird. It's very bumpy. That's because it's not track that we would recognize today. This was cast iron, basically L-stock, which was very brittle. And so the first locomotive he built, it did not have a lot of tractive power because only one side of the wheels was powered from the gearing. The other was just left to spin freely, so it wasn't powerful enough to really pull loads. So he built the Penny Darren, which was a bit bigger, but it was so heavy that it broke the cast iron track. And
nice. I feel that. Can relate.
And so he was sort of stuck, like, what do you do? And then next slide, please.
Oh, gotta get rid of this. All right. Come
on. Something else to consider is that the idea of driving a piston to a wheel with rods was not yet determined to be logical. Like, it makes perfect sense to us now, but we take that for granted that someone thought that maybe building a locomotive with feet was the best way to power
metal gear.
Mm-hmm. And so this is a model that someone built of William Brunton's mechanical traveler, he called it.
Or as I prefer to call it, the Shaggerhod.
Hold on, it starts going.
Oh, there we go. Well,
yes.
It's
oh my God, you weren't lying.
I told you. I'm an honest man, Liam.
I don't like that. I do
not like the moonwalking train, no.
Yeah, no. Please take it off my screen.
No, there's more.
No, there's more, yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh, that's
upsetting.
So while it's going, what problems?
So is this what's coming
for
Amtrak? Amtrak gets this one. I want this. That's how I want to get to Boston. Is a giant robot horse.
I imagine there's an enormous amount of tractive effort on this thing. Like it can't go very fast, but I'm sure that like
I don't love the softball of I imagine there's a lot of tractive effort, and the response is kind of we'll get to that.
Wait, this is the best part.
Walkies.
So you'll notice something the model is having difficulty with is that it's currently on a treadmill, but if you can imagine it hits a patch of mud or maybe loose dirt, this is basically what it would do. It's just sort of like
What we've done is we've invented the train, and then only years later we have made it pathetic.
We've invented the train and immediately cut it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So other problems with this design, obviously, you're limited by speed. It's a very herky-jerky movement. You can only go one direction. There's no reverse setting for it. It's really dumb. It's funny.
I kind of like
dumb.
it. I wish I did, but I'm.
Now, my question is, what would the white notation for this be? Just a 0002 legs?
It would be, I believe, a 0F4.
Awesome.
The F stands for feed.
The F stands for feed. Dude, look it up on Wikifeet.
Oh, I don't like that. It's
Mechanical Traveler.
Last week we had the Goommy, now we have the Oh my god, we're gonna be here for like 6 hours.
God,
Great.
please no.
Fuck you. No, I got caffeine.
Okay,
I'm ready, baby. The delirium is set in. Let's do delirium.
You go
chat.
over an hour on this shit, and I'm falling asleep in the podcast.
Okay, next slide.
Next slide.
Are you clapping at him?
That's right. Let's go.
It says here it could sometimes lift the rear wheel off the track.
Yeah.
I'm doing feet wheelies.
It starts doing like
that.
handstands. So finally someone smart decided to start building trains. Both of these men were actually quite good at building them. On the left we have George Stephenson. He's sometimes called father of the railways. I disagree with that title. It was sort of a long gradual thing where a lot of people did a lot of contributions, and you couldn't get here without any one of them. But he builds a locomotive called Locomotion Number 1 for the Stockton and Darlington Railway. First sort of like general freight railroad between, a colliery and a port city. And so a couple of things that he did over Trevithick's work to improve it is there's 2 cylinders and they operate out of phase, which means that you can do away with the flywheel because you're not going to stall at the end of a piston stroke. Because when one cylinder is at the end of its stroke, the other is right in the middle and it can still push it around. Another benefit of this is that it is the first locomotive. Yep, it's the first locomotive with coupling rods, which means that all 4 wheels are powered. It has primitive suspension as well. It was one of the first locomotives to use the actual steam exhaust to pull on the fire. So it has, blast pipes that go into the chimney and pull on the fire exhaust and help it to burn hotter. Now, some weird quirks with this, obviously, it's a very weird sort of truss, mechanical linkage. It seems very reminiscent of stationary engines with all their weird mechanical contraptions. The driver actually had to stand sort of like on the side of a wooden plank and just sort of lean back and not get hit by anything, which wasn't really ergonomic. So then the dude on the right looking a little more fucked up. This is Timothy Hackworth.
Oh, God.
And
he does not look like he's ever had fun.
Every time anything bad happens to him, he stores it in those jowls and they get a little bit deeper.
Yes.
Yeah. And trust me, things are going to get a lot worse for him very soon. But he was, working with George Stephenson in developing the locomotive, and he became superintendent of the Stockton and Darlington Railway. And he had, at that time, built the best locomotive in Britain. This is the Royal George. He was very, strong-minded, very particular about the designs he wanted to build and only sort of trusted himself with them. But a lot of benefits of this one is he's moved the cylinders again. He's taken them outside of the boiler and put them directly facing the wheels. Now, granted, they're vertical cylinders, which has its own problem we'll talk about later on. But now he's gone from sort of having them just work out of phase to actually having them work in what's called quartering. And what that is that the rods on one side are 90 degrees off from the rods on the other. And that helps to sort of improve with the, tendency to prevent it from stalling at the end of a stroke. He went from just sort of the old type of valve gear, which was like a tappet system, to using what's called slip eccentrics, which is the eccentric cam can actually turn on the axle about 180 degrees between two stops. And what you can do is you just flip it around for one direction and forward, and the other, you flip it around and it goes in reverse. It's a much simplified system. Still sort of difficult to get starting, but it's an improvement. It's starting to work towards, a machine that's closer to something you sort of just start up and go. It also uses a return flue so that the firebox and the smokestack are on the same end, and the single flue goes through the boiler, makes a U-turn, and comes back. So he effectively doubled the heating surface, and he's using C more thermally efficient. They understand now that more tube means more heat. Next slide. I know, Liam. I'm doing what I can.
Yeah.
Well, no, you're fine. I'm good. Okay. Alice is dying.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Oh shit.
Liam has caffeine, Tommy, baby. I'm good.
Okay. Right, Alice. Like we said, I tried
redirect all complaints to Alice.
Right. I tried to throw some coffee to her, but I'm in Wheeling. So what I did is I went up to the top of the hill right by Wheeling Park, because I thought it might give me maybe 4,000 extra miles of distance. Just like
you've got to like throw in one of those like great circle arcs.
I love the idea of you actually doing it. A great circle that just beans Alice right in the face.
you like
no, I'm dead now, and there's a crater in my face.
Well, no, I actually thought about driving over there, but if I did, I can tell you exactly what would have happened. Is I would have thrown it, and then it would have gone almost maybe like halfway down the first half of the top of the hill.
That is how far hell of an arm, Tom.
Which is like 100 feet, maybe.
Oh, never mind. I take it back. I take it back. That's why that's why they call you Tommy Noodle Arms.
They no, they don't.
I'm going to change your name in Zencaster to Tommy Noodle Arms.
You do not have the power to do that.
Damn it.
Yeah, that's my job. So we reach an interesting point with railways in 1829. I know you see the horse. We're going to talk about that. Don't worry.
Is this to trick some sort of Greeks or Romans into accepting the
some sort of viscera stage?
Yeah.
Oh, that guy's going to be ground up into Burger King patties.
No, the horse is fine, but don't worry. We'll get there.
No, he's a Whopper already.
He's been turned to glue.
So up to this point,
a Whopper. Yeah, this for 3 hours, Tom. You can do it.
Well, it might be 4 because now Justin's getting the opportunity to be Liam and Alice.
Doesn't it feel nice, Roz? Doesn't it feel good to be as annoying as fucking possible? One of my friends who listen, actually one of Roz and I's mutual friends who listen to this podcast, Holly, this one's for you, told me that that this show is just me and Alice interrupting Roz, and I just want to say it's been like that since college, and it's never stopping.
Yes. Yeah, I was interrupting Roz in college, despite the fact that I did not know either of you yet. People just thought I was an asshole, so I was just talking to myself.
No, I just get intrusive thoughts constantly from Alice telepathically transmitting them to me.
See, what we have to do with the show is like every 50 episodes or so, you have to bring on one additional person, and whoever was the serious person then gets seniority, and they get to be a pest. I'm just kidding. I'm having a great time. This is very fun. But in 1829, we get to an interesting point where they realize, okay, well, up to this point, railways were, steam locomotives were only being used in collieries, sort of one directional travel from the mine to the port city.
Yeah, and just push it back down again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Between Liverpool and Manchester, they had the idea, what if we envision this not just as a one-way direction of traffic for freight, but as a bi-directional intercity expressway? In 1829, that's pretty.
You can't carry people on these. What if all of their organs fall out?
Their vaginas are going to fall out.
Their uteri will be sucked out.
That
of
is
their
actually
bodies,
what happened. Yeah, little known fact. We sterilized the entire population of Manchester by accident.
It's not true.
Good.
It's not
It
true.
is. It is. Yeah, you fucking Manx.
I'm curious. What if we just did a podcast where just everybody lies?
You say
It's like,
what if as if this isn't a thing that we already do.
I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, plus a little extra, so help me God.
Yeah. Hi. That's called the podcast spice, and we all do it.
Yes.
So in 1829,
We believe in you.
in 1829, they decided that, okay, we want to have a fast intercity expressway, but none of the locomotives that were built so far were really up to the task. They were slow, they were lumbering, they had feet. It was not conducive to it was not conducive to
How far are Liverpool and Manchester from each other?
about 35 miles.
Okay, thank you.
It's a long way to run, even if you're a train.
Even if you've got train feet, yeah.
And so they decided to do something that I don't think has happened for any other like mode of transport in this stage of development, where they just had like, let's have a contest to see who can make this mode of transit work. And so they had a grand prize. They called it a premium of £500 to be rewarded to any. Yes, to be rewarded to any company who could produce an improved locomotive capable of. What's the what?
Oh, this is another one of the GoFundRikes.
Yeah, and so they needed a locomotive that could travel at an average speed of 12 miles an hour, that was able to complete the 70 miles from Liverpool to Manchester and back, and that was able to stay within a 4.5 ton limit for 4 wheels or 6 ton limit for 6 wheels. And it needed to be able to, quote unquote, consume its own smoke, meaning that it had to be able to burn a smokeless fuel like Coke. It needed to be able to pull at least 3 times its own weight, which, if you think about it, these are very, very steep demands for a machine that was really only able to go maybe like between 3 and 9 miles an hour up to this point. Like, and if they weren't able to do this, they were going to go with stationary engines with ropes every mile.
Oh boy,
which is unfathomable today. But
so they built this whole railroad, and then we're like, here, we'll do a contest to see if anyone can actually make it work.
Yeah, because basically we built the loop. Can anyone make this work?
No. Okay. No.
Well,
no.
Well, luckily, they did make it work, but none of the engines on this screen won. This is the losers bracket. So usually
we're familiar with the losers bracket.
Usually we think of like 3 engines at Rainhill, which is where the trials were. They had 1.5 miles of track built, and they would just run up and down that 1.5 miles for the equivalent of 70 miles, and see how efficient is the engine, is it able to complete the speed and the haulage requirements. Just sort of almost like a drag strip where they just ran these engines back and forth. And so that's why it's called the Rainhill Trials. And there were 5 locomotives entered, 2 of them that didn't really get to compete. In the upper left, we have Perseverance, which was built by a manufacturer in Edinburgh.
Yeah, I've entered trying my best. Please don't be mad at me.
We've entered. We'll get there
when it's done.
This engine called SEPTA.
When it's done. Oh,
we're getting there.
Unfortunately, the roads were so bad, in the UK, that they had to haul it by boat. And when they went to unload it from the boat, they dropped it.
Ooh.
So you try to get it working. It went about 5 miles an hour before it died for real. And they gave him a consolation prize of 25 quid and just said, okay, here's your bus fare, go home. There was another person who had built a very strange contraption with a horse on it called Cycloped. It generated, after mechanical loss, probably about 0.6 horsepower.
It's not even as good as a real horse.
Fewer viscera, though.
Yes,
6/10 the viscera.
Less viscera.
3/5, excuse me.
It gets to eat. It gets to eat some food while it's running.
We're gonna take a horse and we're gonna introduce mechanical laws to this.
Also, if you can see the way it would run, the way it would turn the wheels, it would be triumphantly sprinting ass first.
That's how I sprint.
Just running ass first with a train in front of you while eating oats.
Yes, that's you've described my workout regimen such that it is.
Well, it only went 3 miles an hour, which is slower than a horse can walk, and it was disqualified.
It's just this
So it was
horse
slower
moonwalking
and-
with
yeah.
a train.
Yeah, it was slower and less powerful.
Sometimes
than a
technology
horse.
is
That's
like
so
we've made
embarrassing.
horses worse.
He would have done better if he didn't even fucking show up and try. If he had just brought a horse, he would have done better.
Yeah.
He probably could have won, actually. And then lower left is the novelty, which looks very weird to us, but it was very familiar to people at this time because it was believed to have been a converted fire engine, like a horse-drawn fire engine that uses steam to pump water. And so you have a vertical portion of the boiler and then a horizontal portion with an S-shaped flue that goes forward and then back and then forward again and then out the front. It uses a crankshaft to drive the bellows, which it used to blow air through. So instead of using the exhaust steam to pull on the draft, it had bellows. And a problem with that is it got 6 horsepower to the wheels, but needed 6.5 horsepower to actually drive the bellows to draft it. So they were spending more energy just trying to heat the fire than they were turning the wheels. And then the bellows got full of, a flammable gas and exploded.
Hate when that happens.
That's gone poorly.
And then they repaired the bellows and tried to run again, and then the feed water pump died. And this is going to be a recurring theme. If there is an Achilles heel to steam locomotives, it is the mechanical feed water pump. It is a piece of machinery that is very delicate, that has to make, a watertight seal, and it's connected directly to unsprung weight, and is getting all the vibration and hammer blow from the wheels directly into a fragile pump casting. So they tended to pack in pretty easily. And so Novelty, although it ran very fast, it went almost 30 miles an hour in a demonstration run, was not able to haul a load at enough of a speed. And then the feed water pump died, and it had to withdraw.
Imagining the man gets his top hat blown off because he's gone so fast.
Well, actually, no. The fire exhaust,
the Maxell thing where he plays the
THX.
THX. Yeah. It just blows, literally blows.
Well, no, it's worse than that because
that was beautiful. Thank you.
They did a restaging of the trials with improved water pumps, and they found out that the top feed fire actually just blows carbon monoxide right in the face of the fireman.
Again, proletarian.
Yeah. It's odorless and colorless.
What are you complaining about? That's fine.
Don't worry. Stop bitching.
Excuse me, are you complaining about odorless gas?
Oh, wow. Baby can't breathe so good.
Yeah, no, actually,
Have you considered that your lungs may just be weak?
Just some guys going over cock.
The funniest part about it is
Soviet man can put in 14-hour shifts every day without complaining.
No, the thing is, the funniest part about that is they interviewed him on the documentary for the restaging of the Rainhill trials, and the fireman basically said, like, yeah, I'm having a hard time keeping my eyes open and trouble breathing, but I guess I'll live.
Well, a process man am I.
Oh, great song.
And so we get to the locomotive that would have probably come closest to being a real challenger to the winner of this trial. This is Sans Pareil, built by Timothy Hackworth of the previous slide. And you can see it's basically like a 4-wheeled version of the Royal George. It's the same concepts, but scaled down. However, he kept the vertical cylinders, and the problem with that is you cannot spring a driving axle with vertical cylinders, otherwise the deformation from the spring will change the placement of the piston and valves, and so you'll mess up your valve timing. So it was just unsprung, and it just almost basically broke the track. But the main issue with it is that he had sourced his wrought iron for the boiler from a substandard manufacturer, so the boiler leaked a lot. The fuel consumption was high, and he had accused the Stephensons of sabotage because he was just building this locomotive in his spare time, but he had to outsource the cylinders to the Stephenson and Company manufacturing, works. And so they had cast 8 cylinders for him. They told him, take your pick. And so he got them.
And they gave him
one of the
duds
ones that he had taken. Yeah, he got the dud.
I'm now picturing Stevenson slipping the boat guy a 50 to like drop the fucking other engine off of the boat, Like,
yeah, it's like,
Liam, you're giving us some echo.
Yeah.
Am I? Hang on. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Is that any better? My bad.
Yeah, I can't hear an echo.
Yeah, good.
That's much better.
The mic is also, sorry, the mic's not usually where I have it, so I'm kind of trying to Rayman dodge my own mic.
We're all having a time this evening.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, some of us are. Some of us, like Roz, are making us do this at 6. Yeah, I know. When we mutiny, Roz, you go first.
And so Sonparai, in addition to having the cracked cylinder and the high fuel consumption and the leaky boiler, guess what else happened to it? Feed water pump died. So got withdrawn for that. And so now we go to finally next slide.
Frantically feeding it with some water bottles.
Just chucking a water bottle at the boiler. It starts whistling and you have to like click the button and it goes like toot toot. As the alarm resets.
Just gonna activate Windows thing.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's gone now because Atomic Thumbs.
Yes.
Killed one of our co-hosts, and yet we have to thank them.
Yeah. Thanks, Roz and Atomic Thumbs.
It's okay. I'm subbing for the Activate Windows logo.
That's right.
Mine keeps threatening to be unactivated, but I think it's activated. I don't know.
And so this slide is not just the winner, which is the engine in the upper left. That's, of course, Stephenson's rocket. Some people think it was built by George Stephenson, but he was busy constructing the actual Liverpool and Manchester Railway. So he said, to his son, Robert, okay, build a train and, make it good.
Hey,
And
Bob, could you build a train for me? Thanks.
Make it good.
Hey, Bobby, build me a winner. Build me trains and train accessories. And so this locomotive also had design influences from the actual guy who was running the trials, Henry Booth. And it was actually Booth himself who had the idea of, hey, don't just have one tube or a tube that makes a U-turn. Just put a bunch of tubes through the boiler, a bunch of smaller tubes.
The forbidden spaghetti.
And
yeah.
And so
More
what that does
is better.
Yes, because they had understood that, more tube made more steam, but what this did was considerably more. Like you had, I think it was either 25 or 30 small 2 or 3 inch tubes through the boiler, and it had 5 times the heating surface of Sonparai. And so not only that, but it had a proper, double sheath, stay bolted firebox. This is the first locomotive to combine a multi-tubular boiler and the stable, modern firebox. A man in France named Max Segun actually had the first drawing for the concept of a multi-tubular boiler about a year earlier, but this is the first one that got built. And also the cylinders are put down lower at an angle, which means that you can have a better suspension, and the rods, instead of going through, a wacky contraption on top of the boiler, it just goes directly to the drive rods. It simplified the motion, made less points of failure, because at this point, any locomotive built at this time, as railway historian Anthony Dawson would say, was at or beyond the cutting edge of sort of material science at the time. It's genuinely, if you had teleported me back to 1829 and asked me, hey, can you build a locomotive with your modern knowledge that could win the Rainhill trials? I would not be able to make something that I would have confidence in that would be very different than Rocket. I would make certain, modern sort of resto mod things, like more modern valve gear, maybe a proper smoke box, but what the Rocket was at the time was sort of the
seat.
Yeah, it was the best engine that you could theoretically build at that time. And so it had not only won the trials, but it had, in, a display of showmanship, George Stephenson had run it at, I think, up to 35 miles an hour, which would have been unbelievable at the time. That is the first time a human has ever traveled a faster sustained speed than a horse that wasn't just falling to his death. Because a human's probably gone 100 miles an hour down a mine shaft, but he did not talk about it later.
Fastest you can go twice.
So, yes.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Rocket immediately after it had won, you'd think that, it would go by railroad tycoon rules that, people will pay a 20% premium to ride on this wondrous, famous train. No, it pulled like ballast and maintenance of way trains for the rest of its life. And it also was the first locomotive to actually kill a person in revenue service. Or rather, kill a passenger.
Nice.
The Tory MP, William Huskisson.
Oh, no. That was terrible.
Yeah, so Rocket already, doing praxis. So on the opening day of the line, there was a special chartered train with the Duke of Wellington. Sir William Huskisson was got out of his carriage. This man had like a lot of like fainting and balance issues.
Again, they just let you be an
this
MP
was not a good idea.
Back in the day, if you were just generally like extremely frail, but like for aristocratic reasons.
Yeah, so
I'm imagining a Reese Moggs type character.
Yeah, so he does,
but back
like,
when that was more acceptable.
Yeah, so he does like the drunk Wario hobble over to the Duke of Wellington's coach, and he's like talking to him, but then he's standing on the other line because it's a double track, and Rocket is barreling towards him on the other line, and he gets basically run over by it. It crushes his leg. He gets hauled back to Manchester at like 40 miles an hour, inadvertently set another speed record just trying to, help this dumbass who got himself killed. But he ended up dying. And so Sir William Huskisson was the first casualty on the Liverpool and Manchester Railway. But immediately after Rocket was built, there were two other engines that were very near steps, very close evolutions of the design from the Rocket to something much more recognizable to the standard format we have. So directly beneath Rocket, we have a locomotive called the Northumbrian, which you'll notice it has a proper smoke box at the front, which makes cleaning the flues out and doing maintenance easier. It has a proper firebox actually integrated into the boiler shell instead of bolted on at the back. It has internal throttle valves, which is new. It has the cylinders closer to horizontal to prevent hunting or hammer blow. And it has a proper tender cistern, which is, the big water tank on it. Because before then, they had just had a coal cart with a big oak barrel on it.
Big barrel, yeah.
And Rocket it's in the Liverpool and Manchester Minute somewhere. Rocket had derailed, and that barrel just flew off and crushed a guy. No. So they decided, okay, this is bad. We gotta. It's like every time one person dies, we got to do something different.
Killed Donkey Kong style by a big barrel rolling over you.
What a hell of a way to go.
Should have jumped.
Sorry. Oh, Christ.
They play the Donkey Kong theme on a pipe organ as they lay in the ground, yeah.
On a calliope.
It's tinkling the keys there, huh?
Oh, wait. Hold on. Wait. And so finally, Northumbrian was sort of an interstitial locomotive between Rocket and the final one here on the right. This locomotive is called Planet. It is sort of the first mainline express locomotive built for that purpose. It is also the first locomotive to be built in a class of engines where there were multiple built. There were, I think, like 9 or 10 built for the Liverpool and Manchester, and then like 100 built everywhere else in the world. But additional improvements. So the cylinders have moved again. They are now at the front of the engine and underneath the smoke box to keep them warm, which is more thermally efficient. It drives a crank axle between the driving wheels, which are now at the back for more stability. You have now an internal dry pipe from the throttle to the cylinders for additional thermal efficiency. And this is sort of the locomotive that started doing the regular work on the line. You might even notice it's the front half of it's sort of similar to the front half of Pioneer at the start of this episode. And that's, that just goes to show like how much this design was very much like the template on which all engines after that were built. But there is one thing missing from this, and that is modern valve gear. In a way that we would know. It was still using the slip eccentric design that Timothy Hackworth had been working with. And even though, there were improvements to it, it was still not able to do what's called expansive working. So steam locomotives were always hampered by the faster they went, the more they depleted their steam faster. They weren't really able to use it economically until in 1841, 2 employees of the Stevenson Company, a draftsman and I think a casting maker, decided, well, okay, we're going to do something different. Instead of having, the slip eccentrics, we're going to have a pair of eccentrics for each side. Because it was originally, you had 1 eccentric for the left cylinder, 1 eccentric for the right. It said, okay, what if we do 2 for each side? And one of them is like a hook for forward, one's a hook for reverse. And that's called gab valve gear. It still doesn't allow for more efficient working, but it's a more simplified motion. Instead of having these levers that you actually have to crank by hand to get it to start, you could just select forward or reverse. But then after that, they had the idea, what if we connect the space between those 2 hooks for forward and reverse with a solid curved link? And what that does is actually allows you to not only have forward and reverse settings, but a bunch of settings in between them, which then we will talk about in the next slide. This is the start of valve gear as we know it. So this is a render I did of Stevenson valve gear. It's usually mounted between the wheels of an engine. I've moved it to the outside. And so something I should also note is that there's 2 eccentrics here for this 1 cylinder. They are not mounted 90 degrees from the crank, but rather slightly before. That helps to give additional valve movement when the engine's in neutral, which also helps with like lap and lead and these stuff that we don't have time for today. But you have a forward eccentric and a back eccentric with the expansion link connected between them. If you drop the link, you select the forward setting, which moves the valve to the front. If you raise the link, you expose the valve in the back and pushes steam to the backside for reverse. And then you'll also note that directs movement through what's called a transmission bar, which is not connected to the expansion link vertically, but rather just translates horizontal motion. And so if we put it in forward gear and then start, the engine, steam will come in, it'll start to push on the wheel. The eccentrics will start to spin in time with the rods. And that again reverses the valve in the steam chest in order to have the timing for steam admission and steam exhaust. And as it starts going faster and faster, you're still using steam at the full side. If we put it in reverse, same thing, just the opposite direction. But again, this is still sort of how it was beforehand, where you're using steam for the entire stroke. Where the steam is white, that's where it's being admitted at full boiler pressure. Where it grays out is actually what I want to talk about, because that is where we get into what's called expansive working.
At what point does it elect the Pope, Tom?
Never. And so,
no, okay.
That's when it comes out the stack.
So what you'll notice is right here, as the steam valve closes, the steam grays out. That's no longer getting steam from the boiler, but it's still under pressure and can move the piston to expand its volume. And so that's called expansive working. The point at which the valve closes is called the cutoff. And so in low gear or full forward, this is what you call, full forward cutoff or full gear. And it's emitting steam for about 70 to 80% of the stroke. And so as you're starting up, it's really good for getting a lot of power for getting the train underway. But as you start going faster, you need less and less power to maintain that speed. So now what it's doing is it has notched up close to neutral, but not all the way. And now you'll see the valve closes very quickly, around 15 to 20%, and the rest of the piston is pushed by expansive working. And this allows steam locomotives to get bigger, more powerful, faster, more efficient, because they're able to use their boiler steam more economically, more tactically, rather than just wasting it all at full pressure. So again, that was at full boiler or full cutoff, and then we notch it back to the what's called the company notch, because you're saving the company money and fuel by working more efficiently like that. And that's how Stevenson valve gear works. I know that was kind of rushed, but hopefully it gives you a better idea of like the mechanical workings of that.
It's like the way I always sort of describe it is, it's sort of like the ignition timing on a car, right? You have
Sort of.
variable ignition timing.
Hey, Roz, you're kind of quiet.
Oh, you have like variable
Thank you.
ignition timing. You have variable, timing for how the valves work, and
Right.
that and the valve gear is just, sort of a mechanical calculator, I guess.
Yeah, and it's also important to note that there is no like gearbox on a locomotive. It's 1-to-1 direct drive. There's no transmission. You just have the piston and the valve, and what percentage of the stroke you're letting steam in controls sort of what part of the cutoff you're in. Next slide.
It's a one-stroke engine.
Mm-hmm. And so you'd think that, okay, well, we have all the building blocks for steam locomotives. What are they going to do now? They started blowing up a lot.
Yes.
And there's a reason for this. Initially, it was just because of still they were working sort of at the limits of what cast and wrought iron could do. They eventually went over to steel, but even then they were having issues, and that is because there is another. Well, there is something which is the opposite of a failsafe buried deep in the belly of a locomotive.
Yeah, the fail deadly.
Yeah,
fail deadly.
Yes. Because see, what happens is when a human is moderately dehydrated, they get a bit of a headache, they get kind of thirsty, they pat their tummy and they're like, oh, I should get something to drink. If a steam locomotive gets moderately dehydrated, it fucking kills itself.
That's how I feel like when I'm moderately dehydrated at this point, because I'm an old man and I'm just like, well, no water, gotta fucking kill myself.
If a steam engine has not had enough water, it will become a danger to itself and others.
Yes.
And that is because inside the firebox of the various sheets of metal, the one at the top is vulnerable. It's what's called the crown sheet, which Roz has just highlighted there. And you must maintain a water level above that at all times. Otherwise, because the heat of the fire is now so strong with better drafting and using coal as fuel, if water drops below that, it will heat the metal so much that it will get to a point where it is malleable and melt. And then the entire force of the boiler will implode the firebox and pole vault the engine, killing everyone on board. It looks cool, but it's not good.
Yes.
And so there's a few ways that we worked to remedy this. Not us specifically. We would have all died if we tried.
Yes.
But so some improvements. Instead of using manual, what's called tricocks, which are water valves that you use to check the water level in the boiler, you started moving towards sight glasses, which give you better readings. Instead of mechanical feed water pumps and crosshead pumps, which, as I said earlier, are like the Achilles heel of an engine, because they tended to pack in so easily and break. In the 1850s and 60s, we switched over to what's called a lifting injector. And what this does is it uses a series of cones to combine steam from the boiler and water from the tender in a way that as they go through the steam inlet cone and then the combining cone, the pressure drops considerably, but the speed of it goes through that overflow near the speed of sound. And as it comes out of the delivery cone, which is facing the opposite direction, you have something that's going at low pressure but high speed to then high pressure but low speed. And the force changes enough that it actually allows you to pump water using steam from the boiler at a higher pressure than the boiler itself, which then is able to lift the check valves and inject water into the boiler. It sounds a bit like rocket science, and that's because it kind of is.
It's the Venturi effect, right?
Yes.
And this is if you remember from the Hindenburg episode, we talked about Baptiste Jules Henry Jacques Gifford.
Jesus,
right?
no.
Yeah, the guy who had the first steam-powered balloon and then killed himself because of declining eyesight, despite the fact that eyeglasses were available.
Whose balloon was like destroyed by peasants.
He couldn't
build.
Yeah,
he killed himself because he couldn't build steam-powered glasses.
He's the first steampunk.
Exactly. No, this was
so like I want to put a bunch of gears and shit on this, even though it won't do anything.
It's the first proper punk in that he was extremely depressed, I guess.
But fortunately, his invention, the Giffard injector, now provided a more reliable and safer way of delivering water to boilers. And there's usually a minimum, you have to have at least 2 of these on every engine. And so that's another improvement. Instead of just having one pump like Sanspareil and Novelty did, every locomotive is required to have at least 2 mains of getting water into the boiler. Some have 3. Another issue is that trains had a hard time stopping, and they would often just fly off the tracks or kill people. And so a man named George Westinghouse had invented his locomotive air brake in 1869, which allowed trains that were driving faster to be able to stop faster. And on the first test run, they had, a locomotive equipped with his first air brake model. They had a coach full of superintendents and dignitaries to inspect and observe the trials. But on the way to where they wanted to test it, a horse and cart got stuck on the tracks outside of a tunnel. The engineer immediately slammed on the brakes. Everyone in the car fell to the floor, and they said, "Well, I think we've seen everything we need to know. That's enough of a test for me."
It stops.
Next slide.
Fine.
Because before that, you had to have a man run on top of the cars the whole way back to train and apply the handbrakes manually.
Yeah, it used to be cooler.
Yes. That is, again, more proletarian, not this bourgeois decadent air brake.
In fact, a lot of brakemen who had to run on top of trains were mad at Westinghouse because he took away their gerbs.
That's why you got to have the very, very specific craft unions. So you have an international brotherhood of like train runner honors.
Yep, I'm the man who runs on the catwalk on freight cars and falls off and dies.
Yes. One big union per man.
and so
one man union.
Yes.
And so in the mid-19th century, we have a couple of paradigms set. I know I'm sorry. Okay. I'll try to be a bit more brief about it.
Risk. It's fine. Yeah, we're all fine. We're all fine here.
Okay. So this slide, this is just here to show that in the mid-19th century, there's sort of a set of paradigms that were established in the UK and the US, 2 very different ways of building locomotives. The reason for this is because in the UK, they had very well-built track, and usually a lot of tracks, they had very light loads to haul on very flat terrain, so they could go with a bit more simple stuff. In the UK, also, you had the inside cylinders of Planet remained very popular because it just kept everything internal. The British sort of design mantra was that they wanted to hide all the working bits.
This load of Pop-Tarts to fucking big Tesco's, innit? Mm-hmm. So I need to do a bunch of fancy Yank engineering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so there was a design philosophy that they wanted to sort of hide all the mechanical bits, make it as clean and polished and non-mechanical as looking as they can. Just sort of make it almost a stylized version of an engine.
It looks like a big
We're bringing
horse.
back the giant 0.6 horsepower horse.
Cycle And so you also have some that I like to call
mechanical losses.
And you also have something that I like to call the rule of threes, which has had a lot of British locos from this time have 3 axles on the tender and 3 axles on the engine. So you either have like your 060 good engine, or you have a 222 passenger engine, or a 240 mixed traffic engine. In America, all locomotives used the 440 design, and the reason for that is because the track was shitty. The track was very, very shitty.
I was going to expect because it was superior and good, and we were good at stuff, not because it sucked ass. Because we had to do our best.
Well, no, the 440 is a good design. It allows you to have what's called a fully equalized suspension, which is you had an equalizing beam between each driving axle, and then you had the 4-wheeled pilot truck, which is able to negotiate sharp curves and very rough track, sort of guides the engine along the track of where it should be. And also, you'll notice outside cylinders, the valve gear space between the cylinder and the first driving wheel is very open, very accessible for maintenance. You also have the big spark arrestor, the balloon stack or the diamond stack for catching cinders. You have this big box headlight for running at night. And it's much more flashy, much more like
everything's brass.
It's a train you want to do like
polished
robbery
wood.
of.
It's like,
yes.
Perhaps in 10 FPS movie style.
Yes,
and a nice little sepia tone. Yeah, that'll look good.
And so in the mid to late 19th century, something started to happen, which is that people started to say, hey, this train shit is pretty good. We want to start using it more. And so the demand for them got larger. They needed to run faster and pull heavier loads. And in England, they just did that by laying more tracks and running more trains. So they were able to keep this tiny, austere 060 goods engine for that. In America, where it's mostly single track with passing sidings on very mountainous western routes, they had to make the engines bigger. The problem is that they use this 440 template, and you can only expand it so much. There's a fatal flaw and a limit to how much you can expand that. And if you want to see how much they tried to grow this tiny little engine, look at the engine on the lower left. Next slide, please.
Hold on, I got to use the restroom. Then we'll do the next slide.
Okay. All right, then. We're
just talk among yourselves.
okay.
Oh, okay.
So what is a train anyway?
Who are trains? Where am I? How you doing there, buddy? Oh, good. That's good.
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel that. Tom, I regret to inform you that you will be executed. Sorry, buddy. Oh my god. Oh. I'm halfway. Alice, do they have Java Monster over there? It's Coffee Monster.
I've never seen that. Unless you like tried to like homebrew it yourself by like mixing.
That sounds like heart attack juice.
Oh,
I could fucking do it,
good,
to be
Tom.
honest. I was in Big Tesco's in it. I was in Big Tesco's and I was in Big Tesco's and I was like, I saw the white Monster Energy and I was like, I should get that, but then I'm like, I will never need this. And it turns out I do in fact need the big Monster Energy can in order to make the podcast good, be funny is.
Yeah, this is. I feel 30% more human, but that's not very human.
Up to a whole 30%.
I'm struggling. Yeah, it's me, baby.
That's
Coming in double digits. That's
double digits,
right.
Yeah.
That's almost a third. That's how good I am.
I was hovering around 9 for a bit during the
Fuck
pandemic.
you, Tom. I'm here because of you.
We could have.
Nope, we were going.
Actually, no, this is my fault because we could have done this Wednesday before Christmas, but I was still trying to get the slides together.
Was I available?
Shit.
Yeah, I think so.
It's fine. Don't
That was
worry
like
about it.
a week ago.
I'm fine.
I should just switch over to like a Bob Ross voice, like, here's a happy little
I'm
engine.
just gonna fucking.
Oh yeah,
But we can get through it
can't do
faster.
that.
We can get through it faster that way.
No,
the last thing you'll hear.
The whole point of the podcast is that it's the showrunner
on the
being
microphone stand. You'll just hear a.
Oh, have you ever heard me snore? Oh, it's bad.
I refuse
folks.
to believe that I snore, and anyone who tells me that I do is lying. Anyone who tells me that anyone who I have slept next to who tells me that I snore is a paid agent of the fucking CIA.
Oh, I smell so bad right now, dude.
Actually, Liam, I have heard you snore because my fiance and I went over to Philly last year, remember?
Oh, that's
no,
right.
you had knockoffs in the
we went
elevator.
We
crazy.
No, my fiance and I had gone out there because we went to see 611 at Strasbourg. And then
you saw 611? Oh, tell me about the J class. Oh, do you know the employees designed it themselves? Oh, it's my favorite. Look at me. I'm a basic bitch. My name's Justin Rosdale.
Yeah, investigate 611. 611. Yeah, investigate 611. 611 was built by people in our own machine shop.
611 was an inside job.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't do those jokes anymore. We'll get yelled at by some guy in the YouTube comment section.
True. He did threaten to fight you, didn't he?
I'll win, dude.
I'm back, by the way.
Welcome back.
So they made the 440 bigger, and it didn't work. We got to talk about El Gobernador.
Oh my god.
So this horrifying monster, built in 1883 on an accursed moon, was the unholy bastard child of incrementalism and
I do like the
belligerent dick
Gramsci
waving.
quote you've got up there.
So the second Iraq War here,
yes. For those listening audio, which don't, the crisis consists precisely in the fact that the old is dying and the new cannot be born. In this interregnum, a great variety of morbid symptoms appear. Specifically 10 morbid symptoms, all which look like wheels. So this is El Gobernador. This is the only 410-0 ever built, for reasons which I will get to. But basically in 1883, Leland Stanford, who was also governor and, one of the big four in the building of the Central Pacific Railroad.
Yeah, all around nice guy, unproblematic.
Yes.
We love our unproblematic faves.
Yeah, so this asshole, even by 19th century standards, said, I want to build the biggest train in the world and have it on my railroad. And then he went to the chief mechanical engineer, A.J. Stevens, and said, hey, build this big stupid thing.
In that exact voice, too.
Okay. Yeah. And, I don't like him putting wheels onto the boiler to turn the freaking frogs again.
Just kind of a cross between Alex Jones and Doug Dinsdale, owner of the Dinsdale Demodome.
I liked it. I need to not do that. I lost my voice the last time I did that for one of Roz's vids. But so yeah, he starts building this stupid, horrible thing. Because the 460 worked, the 480 kind of worked, the 410 is where it started to not work. And so one of the other big four members, Charles Crocker, comes in and sees this engine being built, and he's like, what the fuck is this? And he ordered it to be called Fox. He found out about it and was livid at Stanford, but unfortunately he wasn't able to get his way.
I like the idea of Stanford just like with an enormous 10-gallon house be like, yeah, suck a dick, bitch.
Yeah, no, he ordered the halt reversed and for Stevens to finish building it. And they tried to run it in helper service on the Tehachapi Loop, and it failed miserably. And they only ever used it after that for publicity stunts, where it would haul like 50 empty freight cars out of the station for passengers to look at. And then they turned it into a stationary boiler. And
back then is the thing. So they would just see this shit, and you'd be like, "Man, I bet those cars are probably full of rocks or something." Wow.
Wow. Invisible gravel.
Very heavy air.
Yeah. Look, it's a bunch of boxcars full of celebrity
Look,
air.
You've got heavy water. Why wouldn't you have heavy air? Stands to reason.
All this air was breathed by, I don't know, who's an 1880s celebrity, like Oscar Wilde or something.
Mark Twain.
Mark Twain's air. It's all full of it's full of pirated Gilbert and Sullivan plays.
Jesus. And so the main mechanical problems with this locomotive is, you'll notice the cylinders are giant. The boiler was not able to keep up steam for them. They were also having trouble with the valve timing. There was a lot of back pressure. So A.J. Stevens had to jerry-rig this sort of like double rotary valve system using what became called monkey motion because it moved so weird.
Finally, we returned to monkey.
Yes.
It's like this, you know that monkeys are in the Stone Age now?
What's up?
Don't like that.
What?
There's like a population of like primates or monkeys somewhere that like they're starting to use stone tools now. They're having like
don't like
parallel
that at
evolution.
Nice. Good. Fuck humanity.
You think maybe they'll make a better job of it than us? And then you just look down and you see one of them's just inventing the gun, and you're like, oh no.
Oh shit, they've got guns.
Oh, finally, we're getting Planet of the Apes static here. That's fine.
Pretty much, fine. Yeah. It's just instead of a serum, it's just the inevitable passage of time.
Inevitable passage of time. It's some shit.
Yeah.
But did we lose someone?
Garbage. No, I think we just got.
I muted myself because I'm eating.
Don't do that. Give us the eating sound. That's what the fans want.
I like how. Yeah. Exactly. I like how it's not so much a steam dome as a steam tower.
Yeah. It's just more dicks on the dicks. You have a big long dick that has two dicks on the side. Alice, that's the answer to your question earlier. What is a steam locomotive? Okay. It's a bunch of dicks.
Bunch of dicks.
It's a dick cryptid. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a dick amalgamate.
amalgamation of dicks.
So the main issues with this engine is that the firebox, you'll notice, has to fit between and on top of all the wheels and axles under it. So you're left with something that is very shallow and very narrow, and as a consequence has to be very long. Like, it was about a 9 or 10 foot long firebox, and you had to have some guy chucking big cuts of corded lumber, just trying to chuck that 10 feet through a tiny little hole. And even with two people doing that, they weren't able to keep steam up. So this engine specifically didn't cause a chain reaction, but it was sort of the canary in the coal mine that we cannot do incrementalism with locomotive design using this template. We have to do a radical jump to something that will actually solve the mechanical problems we're dealing with. And so, next slide.
Yes.
Within 20 years,
tested brake.
Within 20 years, we get to a locomotive that is drastically different. The boiler is much larger, and it's able to do that because it's been brought above the level of the wheels. And so that allows you to not be restricted by the gauge of the track. The firebox has been moved behind the driving wheels on a set of trailing wheels. And this allows the firebox to be much deeper and wider for a larger grate and better combustion. Instead of the old slide valves, they switched to piston valves, which are easier to lubricate and can use a higher temperature steam oil, which then allows you to superheat the steam and get more power out of your boiler than just the original saturated steam. So basically, all of these developments, again, were gradual, but the first locomotive type that really had sort of everything together, you know, the magic formula was figured out again, was the 442 Atlantic. And from there, they were able to grow again. Like, if you had asked me, like, what's the most important wheel arrangement in the history of locomotive development, I would argue the Atlantic. I know there's not a single one design that is the most important because it's a developmental thing, but if I had to pick one, it would be this.
I mean, all Atlantics are like terrible. They're like bad locomotives, but they're very good because they signaled better things.
Yes, they were a sign of hope. And you'll also notice on the outside, there is a new valve gear. And don't change the slide yet because there's a bit I want to talk about. But this valve gear, after, you know, Stevenson valve gear was the old standard. This valve gear invented by Echide Valsharts. I'm never going to say that again.
Invented by Johannes
Vonk.
Yeah.
Johannes Vonk. Vonk ball valve gear.
Yeah. So Valsharts, you know, one of the two good Belgians we were able to identify before we started this. Those are the only two. He invented this all the way back in 1844, which is only 3 years after Stevenson valve gear, and he had developed it from Gab valve gear. So it's actually very possible that it may have been developed independently rather than an advancement of Stevenson gear, like some historians think. Another interesting quirk about Valsharts valve gear is that it was such a good valve gear that it was invented twice. A parallel discovery of it was made in 1849 by a German engineer named Hilsinger. And in fact, in Germany, they still call it Hilsinger valve gear to this day.
I like the concept that they discovered it like it was growing on a tree. They were hacking through the jungle somewhere.
He
said you wouldn't say it again.
A tree, and this
owned.
Oh fuck!
He was going through the Belgian Congo, and
a bunch of metal rods fell onto his head, and he looked at it, and he was like, "Oh my god, this is it." But there's a lot of improvements over Stevenson gear that this allows, and we will talk about that in the next slide.
Do we go to the next slide now?
Yeah.
Okay. Here we are. I got to make this go.
Okay.
It's going.
Cool. So you'll notice this is much simpler in design. It's much more directly laid out. There's less duplication of parts. You know, it's shown here modeled with the new cylinder type as well, which once we hide the casing. So now the valve, the actual valve itself is not just a block with a notch cut in the underside. It's actually a spool, and steam is stored on the inside of the valve faces instead of the outside, which is more thermally efficient. Instead of two eccentrics per side, you have one eccentric called a return crank, and that turns the expansion link, which is now facing the opposite direction. And instead of lifting and lowering the link itself, you raise and lower the radius rod, so you're moving a less heavy thing. It's easier to manage.
I've eaten.
Hey, welcome
Very
back.
nice.
We're in the middle of a vid. So as before, you raise and lower up one portion of it. Instead of the links, you're raising and lowering the radius rod, which controls which direction the steam goes into in either the forward or reverse valve port. And so we'll go ahead and let it start running. And also something else I want to talk about is that in order to do away with the second eccentric, you have what's called the union link and the combination lever, which, as you can see here, imparts some motion to the valve when the engine is in neutral. And that helps to compensate for the fact that instead of two eccentrics that are less than 90 degrees, you have one eccentric at 90 degrees now. So you're simplifying the motion. You're bringing it all outside of the engine so it's easier to maintain. And you also have better steaming because the exhaust ports are now larger and they remain open for longer. And it's much, you get better performance at high speeds as well.
It's better. It's more gooder.
They turned the
It's
make
significantly
good
more
thing
gooder.
switched on, which I don't know why they didn't think to do that first.
You ever tried to animate one of these without knowing exactly how it works? It's a pain in the fucking ass.
Yeah, we did that once. We had to render a later iteration of Voltsart's gear called Baker valve gear, which instead of the curved expansion link, it has a series of bell cranks and levers because they wanted to get rid of the sliding die block and only use pin joints.
Yes,
but it makes the valve gear much more stupid.
I'm on Team Baker.
I'm still on Team Voltsart's. Baker can go fuck itself. You cannot get Baker valve gear to run properly in reverse. I have tried for weeks. It's not possible.
How often are you running the steam locomotive in reverse? Like if you got like a big express mainline locomotive, it's like, I don't know, if we're going to reverse to hook it onto the passenger train, then you know what we're going to do? We're going to go full forward all the way from Norfolk to Cincinnati, right?
Everything should be balanced. We need balance. We need that's one weird thing about the Marvel movies is like you can't really have a villain where like his shtick is he just kills half of the people, because like I feel like in the times we're living in, like half of the people are causing all the problems.
Oh boy, we're let's go into overpopulation discourse.
No, I'm saying reel it in. I meant anti-maskers, not
reel it in.
Look, the anti-maskers are going to kill themselves off. Don't worry.
Well, no, it's they cough on other people and then they die. It's not fair.
Nah, well, that's true.
We should probably just cut that out.
We're cutting stuff?
Maybe. No, it's a bonus episode.
Yeah, we all swore a blood oath that we weren't going to do that, which is why the episodes are all like this.
All right, now we get into dumb stuff.
Yeah, we're back to dumb stuff. So engines started getting bigger again, and they got bigger than before, but they also reached a point where it started getting kind of stupid.
Yes.
So up top, we have the Union Pacific 9000 class, which is a 412-2.
Hell yes.
Yes.
So we've got another pair of drivers. It actually worked fairly well. The problem is you needed almost dead straight track to run it on. Otherwise, it would literally start to straighten out your curves.
I see a communism down here.
It had 3 cylinders too.
Who is A. Andreev?
No, this is this is a locomotive built by the Soviet Union. They wanted to go one more wheel than the 12. They built a 414-4, the Bolshoi Chungus. And this engine also had difficulty staying on the track, and only one was built, and they didn't build anymore. There was also a proposal from
Gobernadorsky.
And then so Lima tried to build an even bigger one before they had the idea to do the Allegheny, which you could watch Justin's video on his Transport Fever 2 model for that. I'm in it, and I have a hole in my throat, and I sound terrible. You should definitely say bad things about my voice in that. But this stupid engine had cylinders that were so big that they weren't actually able to fit them on the side of the engine. So they thought, what if we just put the cylinders out in front somewhere and squish them together a bit? And
yes,
luckily, I should say, unfortunately, it didn't get built.
Oh.
Liam, you're gonna like this one.
I'm old, Tom. I'm old, Tom.
It's okay. I'm getting there. You're only like 2 years older than I am,
dude.
Okay,
Listen, I got that reverse Dorian Gray curse where I just aged 1,000 fucking years every day, bro.
1,000 days for each hour of podcasts.
Yeah, dude. Alice, that's how it feels.
You're a little loud there.
Yeah, but
that's because I'm talking literally correctly into the mic. I was making a point, which apparently I'm not allowed to be funny anymore, according to some guy on Twitter, and now apparently was.
Yeah. Yes, but I would like you. You can be funny. You just can't be that loud.
Wow, tone police. Man.
Okay, hang on.
Because your gain is
tone police. Yeah, don't tone police.
Liam,
I will not be part of respectability politics in this household.
Liam, you should be happy. We have bendy boilers. We finally have bendy boilers.
I love bendy boilers. I love them. Tell me more.
Just jangling the keys in front of Liam. No, Liam, we got the bendy boilers. Look, bendy boilers. So eventually, in order to keep engines from being too long, they started to articulate them. A proper articulated engine should have a solid boiler with 2 swiveling engine units underneath of it. The Santa Fe said, well, that's stupid. What if we just articulate the boiler itself and have like a double ball bearing bellows type connection between them? And it was a horrifying disaster. It never worked.
Oh, hell yeah. That's the shit I'm here for.
But then,
Liam, your gain is still too high.
Oh my God.
But then,
how is this? Are you done? Is this
yes,
good?
that's much better.
You're done crying about it? You want me to come over there?
It sounded like you were just spewing fart noises into the microphone.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. Why don't you appreciate my butt arts? I just ate Qdoba, dude. This is a downhill battle.
I had Qdoba today also. Great minds think alike, or fools seldom differ. Who knows?
Yes.
So the
you can do this, Tom.
The standard articulated locomotive has 2 engine units. At some point, Baldwin said, what if we try 3? What if we build the triplex?
Yeah.
And this thing was really stupid. It only went 10 miles an hour because it used too much steam. But then Baldwin said, hey, what if we build 4? And then eventually, they had the concept drawings for the quadruplex, which has the bendy boiler in it after it already proved unsuccessful. And I didn't include it here because there wasn't enough space, but they also drew a concept.
When you say there wasn't enough space, did you mean in time or in the resolution of the slide? Like it just goes off the scale to the right.
It went.
It's very large.
I couldn't
very
get it to
large
fit on the
locomotive.
slide.
The engine unit, by the way, is the cylinders and the driving wheels. So you see that the triplex has 3 of them, and then this articulated guy up here has 2 of them.
Yeah, Bendolio. That's his name.
Antonio Bendolio. I loved his work as Zorro.
I liked him more in
I just
Spy
looked
Kids.
at the notes and realized we are not even close to halfway through the slides yet.
Nope.
It's okay, we start going quick at some point.
Yeah.
Liar.
Your regular articulated locomotives were very successful, but the ones that either had bendy boilers or had 3 engine units were not good.
Yeah, we're just doing sort of like the bonus stupid round to
One
keep
bendy
it fairly
boiler,
brief.
bendy
What if you
boiler.
want to build a locomotive
Like
that doesn't asphyxiate your crew?
I
The
don't
Southern
want
Pacific
to
had
do
to ask
that.
itself
Fuck
this
that.
question.
Yeah,
I'm a railroad
that's
baron.
bourgeois
I love
decadence.
to do murders. That's basically all I do.
Yes, that's
So the problem with the Southern Pacific Railroad specifically on its Donner Summit route is that it has about 40 miles of snow sheds with poor ventilation. And when you start running these big locomotives through there, your crews start to choke, just like harking back to novelty. They get too much carbon monoxide in the face, they start to die. Except now it's too. Except now there's a lot more smoke.
carbon dioxide and get addicted to asphyxiation.
Except now there's more smoke, so you can't just say like, "I guess I'll live."
Do not become, my friends, addicted to oxygen.
You will resent its absence. But the Southern Pacific, because their locomotives burned oil, they had the brilliant idea, what if we just turn the train around and run it backwards, but not fully backwards? And so the cab forward was designed. It looks very cool. And also in the lower left corner, the Soviets built one too. because they have to have one of everything. In the upper,
named Stalinettes, which is also very cool.
Yes, I love that new dance from Stalin and the Stalinettes. You go to the .com later and launch a satellite into space from my grandmother's potato farm, or whatever.
I'm particularly enjoying the like sort of Provo engine driver in the top left here. 26 plus 6 equals 1, baby.
Yes.
And then
that's what they had to do before they had the cab forwards. That's the only way you could breathe in the snow sheds.
Yeah, they just had a little tube with air you could breathe. And then the one in the upper right is just like an oddball one. Technically, one of the first cab forwards built was actually an engine that they tried to build with a marine boiler, and they could only mount it on the original engine frame backwards. So they said, well, let's convert it to oil and run it like this weird ass backwards train. We'll talk more about marine boilers later, but next slide. Okay, that one was quick. That's good. Okay, duplexes.
Oh,
Roz, you got this one.
Duplexes.
I don't have notes for this.
I love duplexes. All right, so
boy,
you have once you're building these locomotives big enough, they are start to become free steaming, right? Which is that the locomotive's always producing more steam when it's properly operated than cylinders can use, right? So the problem here is like, well, okay, we're producing all this power, but we can't use all of it. What do? One option is make more cylinders, right? So
okay,
rather than
stretch out,
just stretch it out, add more cylinders. So this on the top is the N1 5600 George H. Emerson. This is built by the Baltimore and Ohio, right? So rather than being a 484, what they did is they made 2 engine units, right? Thereby making it a 4444, right? So this is not articulated. This is a rigid frame, right? And this way you could use more of the steam you were producing, right? Now, one of the big problems of this was A, it was more complicated to maintain. B, because they made the second engine unit backwards, a whole bunch of dirt and grime got in the cylinders. So
and also it's directly under the firebox, so it's going to be heated higher than what the steam oil can lubricate it at, and you get excessive valve wear.
That'll also do it.
Yep.
I didn't know about that part.
Sorry.
Oh, he's dying.
Knowledge fatigue.
No, I'm not dying. I just took a fat rip off of big.
Oh, why don't you dip like an adult,
You live in West Virginia, Tom.
Dip, you coward.
Who said it was tobacco?
Yeah, it should be tobacco. Use dip, you pussy.
The B&O built one duplex locomotive. The Pennsylvania Railroad built several. This is one of the first prototypes, the S1 down here, designed by Raymond Loewy. One of the big problems with this, it was built during the early part of World War II, right? There were material shortages. That's why they have a 6-wheel truck in front. They have 2 engine units. They have a 6-wheel truck in back. This is a 6446.
Is that why they did it? They just like recycled some Commonwealth trucks because they didn't want to build a normal pilot truck?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And this spent most of its career sitting on a treadmill at a World's Fair. I think it was the 1939 World's Fair, as opposed to, going out and doing service. One of the big problems, it was so big, it was so long, it was so rigid, it couldn't make it farther than Crestline, Ohio from Chicago.
Yeah, but on the other hand, look at it this way. It did inspire a whole bunch of Ayn Rand's fucked sexuality and psychosis and politics and stuff. And now as a partial result of that, we're sort of burning the world down. So,
yes, that's accurate. I mean,
because it looks like a dick. It looks like a dick. It looks like a
huge,
it has to
fucking
go. It has to be.
cock. Yes.
I hit myself in the eye.
Oh no! I was gonna have a slide in here of the most fucked up streamliners I could find, but I cut it out for time.
There's some fucking doozies, dude.
Yeah, I was about to say. I mean, we should have put 611 in here.
No, we shouldn't have put. I don't 611 care about the J class.
Well, I do. I like the
I
Norfolk and Western.
I fucking know.
Next slide, please.
Go home, Foamer.
So, what if we want to build an engine with a boiler?
That just looks like a dick and balls.
Yeah, what you've done there is you've made a dick and balls. The steam is stored in the balls.
The thing I love about the Hush Hush and the PT Mikado is they look like they're uncircumcised. This is funny.
232 uncut. No fats, no
Oh,
fams.
you're going by the French classification. I like it.
Yeah. Well, that'd be a Hudson. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Hudson. Oh,
Yeah.
oui, oui.
We French, we count the axles, we do not count the wheels because you only see half the wheels at any one time.
That's right.
So, oui, oui.
If you can see both sides of wheels at the same time, you are a hammerhead shark. I'm sorry, I got really high.
This bodes well for keeping the podcast on track when two of us are fucking delirious from tiredness and one of us just baked, and it's just down to Ross, who is like famously very experienced at keeping us on track and on time and punctual.
All right.
Okay, focus.
Once upon a time, when I was a young warthog.
When he was a young warthog.
My God.
When I was a lad,
I can do this.
served the term as office boy in an attorney's firm.
I can do this. So these are all experiments in high pressure steam. In the upper right,
they're all experiments how to make an uncircumcised train.
Yes.
Yes.
Some are more successful than others.
Britain was so anti-Semitic that they were like looking at a steam engine was just like, this look Jewish here.
Hey. We'll get you. Me and Lord, whoever Rothschild will get you. I do like bottom right just looks like half a circus train.
Yep. So upper left was an experiment in water tube high pressure boilers. Upper left is an experiment in a marine boiler. Because the difference between a fire tube and water tube is a fire tube boiler, you have the boiler full of water and tubes with the fire gas go through it. With a water tube, you have tubes full of water and the fire gas goes around it.
You're just saying words to me.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
That just washed over me.
In a fire tube boiler, there's a big tank full of water, and then there's fire in the tubes. But in a water tube boiler, there's a big tank full of fire, and the water is in the tubes.
That's exactly what I said. So the problem with these is that they try to use a boat boiler on a train. The problem is boats get very soft, gentle vibrations from the waves. Trains is like hitting the train with a big goddamn hammer constantly. So
they just drive the train in the water. What's the problem?
You put the fire out if it gets over the grate.
Also, rust.
Yes. Also, you could like temperature shock the boiler and then it explodes and we all die.
It's back, baby.
Also, it doesn't float.
That's another thing. This was mainly like they had tried to do it with fire tubes or with water tubes. They found it didn't work, so that's why we have to stick with the fire tube boiler from here on out. Next slide.
Oh, wait, no, we got three more on here, right?
No, I talked about all three of them.
You didn't talk about Baldwin 60,000.
Baldwin 60,000 was an attempt to make a hybridized version between a fire tube boiler and a water tube firebox. It was fairly successful boiler design wise. However, it was hard on track, and despite sending it to a bunch of railroads, they really didn't want to order any. And so
it was like very successful in trials. It was just like the railroads were like, I don't want to do this much maintenance. Put it in the basement of the Franklin Institute, which is where it is now.
Where it can't escape.
Bring it forward and back,
and send bad ideas to people.
SCP.
Yeah, and then there's the LF lorry up here. It's 480. This is a high pressure Delaware and Hudson locomotive, 500 psi. Normal working pressure on a steam locomotive, 250 psi or so. And
250 to 300 near the end. Yeah,
250 to 300. Yeah, this was. Some of the locomotives went much higher than that. This one was named after LF Laurie, who was supposedly the man who came up with the expression of "what a hell of a way to run a railroad." So high pressure is not very successful. I mean, it was the the way, an obvious way forward was to make high pressure steam locomotives, because the way a Carnot heat engine works is, the difference between temperature and pressure of, your working heat and your rejected heat increases efficiency. But, the maintenance costs were just so damn high that you couldn't do anything with it.
And that's an important lesson in railroad design history, is that even if something was technically more efficient, if it was cheaper to run the alternative and get the same output, they went with the cheaper option. That's why locomotives tended to follow the KISS principle.
Yes.
Next slide.
But then there were, oh boy.
Then
the
engines got too efficient.
Yeah, it went too far.
Shout out to the asbestos Smurfs down here.
Yes. So
I like that it's just enough to see that suit, the hood, and the mittens are all 100% asbestos.
It doesn't cover his shoes, so he's gonna melt from the bottom up, like the guy in what was it, the volcano movie in Los Angeles.
Yeah, there's some convection happening there.
Getting a reverse Indiana Jones. You saw it's the Ark of the Covenant, but it was only exposed to your feet.
I saw a woman wearing an unironic Ark Encounter sweatshirt, and I kind of wanted to track her down. Just be like, you spent $38 on this, huh? And now I want to go to Ark Encounter.
Well, no. Let's talk about this. Can your feet see the Ark of the Covenant and process what it's looking at? If no, they should be fine.
I don't care.
The feet are fine.
We have to,
so that they can one day evolve into trains.
I think that because I'm Jewish, I would be fine.
The feet will evolve into trains.
Indiana Jones wasn't Jewish.
Yeah. So, all right. So you start looking into these sort of late steam locomotives, like you're trying to compete with diesels. One of the things you want to do is you want to increase efficiency, right? So the New York Central Railroad built this class called the Niagara, right? This is a 484 Northern, right? And the idea was this would haul the 20th Century Limited, the
hang in there,
Empire
Alice.
State Express, so on and so forth.
I'm hanging in there.
Right? And they would run, these would be available 6 out of 7 days a week, right? And then on the 7th day, it would rest. But not really, because steam locomotives take a long, long time to fire up, right? So what they did...
It took 30 years to fire up 611, or...
Yes. So what they did was, on the 7th day, they'd extinguish the fire, but it would take the locomotive never fully cooled down. They would send men in asbestos suits into the firebox to clean it out. And then they would climb out, and then it'd be ready to go for the next run.
Why are they walking so comically, is what I want to know.
Did you not hear the phrase asbestos suit?
Well, they're doing the album picture for Abbey Road. The Abbey is short for asbestos.
I just mean, look at how high they're all swinging their arms, right? There's no reason for you to do that other than comedy.
Asbestos dogs. They die of mesothelioma.
It's funny because it happened 30 years later.
Another one is, Andre Champion's 484 for the SNCF.
Wait, hold on a second. Hold on. I've been looking at this for a week and a half. I just realized, to do the size comparison, by the French train, they have a backpacker, and by the American one, it's a cowboy.
That's cool. I love an asbestos cowboy.
I'm a cowboy on an asbestos horse I ride.
It's mostly just dead, to be honest.
Or alive.
Dead, or who am I kidding?
Andre Champlain was a French locomotive engineer, not driving engineer in that he studied like thermodynamics and garbage. He was like, what if we started applying math to steam locomotives rather than just making certain parts bigger and assuming that would create more power, right? And he created this, one of the only 484s to run in Europe, right? And for its size, you can see it's much smaller than the Niagara below it. it produced just an absurd amount of power. Just like this thing, I think it was like 5,000 horsepower or something. The Niagara below is like 6,000, I think.
I think the one above was close to 6,000 as well.
Yeah, it was just like it was a beast.
Because I believe the one above is a 4-cylinder. If I'm correct.
God. 4 cylinders.
Yeah, a lot of express locomotives in France and England were like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Great Western Railway Castle class was 4 cylinders. They're very cool.
Oh, oui, les locomotives. But yeah, you didn't really see like, thermodynamic principles being applied to these locomotives until fairly late in the development of them, by the time that, diesels seem to be dominant and were dominant, right? So we have no idea what is the top end steam locomotive. We're going to talk about that later. But, there were some attempts. And then there were some weirdos.
So
because everything we've seen so far has been so normal.
Extremely normal.
Yeah.
Love to look at uncircumcised dogs for 15 minutes.
So
it's gonna get worse.
Liam, if you think some of these are what dicks look like, you should talk to your doctor.
Maybe you should talk to your doctor, Tom.
I don't have one.
And this economy.
I have health insurance.
Actually, wait, no, I should qualify for one because I got Medicaid after I almost died this year.
Attaboy.
Congrats.
I lost just enough income before I almost died of sepsis.
Hey, congratulations.
Yes.
I qualified
Congrats
for
on having
I threaded the
horrible
needle. Wealthy enough to survive, poor enough to get Medicaid.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. So upper left, in order to start competing with diesel electric locomotives, they tried to make a steam electric locomotive, also known as a steam turbine. So you have a steam locomotive turning. Originally, the S3 on the Pennsylvania, the turbine engine.
The S2 was the turbine one, yeah.
The S2 was a steam turbine that just had the actual turbine fan directly on the axle for direct drive. That's very inefficient when starting. So instead, they had you turn a steam turbine hooked up to a dynamo or like a generator, and then that would power electric traction motors in order to get better performance at low speed. So the
S2 actually had 2 turbines because it's so difficult to get it to go in reverse. Yeah. You needed a separate turbine to go backwards.
Yeah. That's funny. So the upper left was another example of that, which is on the Chesapeake in Ohio, just this long, weird sort of Fallout diesel punk looking thing. One on the upper right just straight up does look like a diesel. In fact, that is a steam turbine built for the Union Pacific.
Neither of them worked very good.
Nope. Lower left actually did work, but it's very strange. You can only have it in one economic situation in history, and that is when, Switzerland?
Switzerland in World War II. The Nazis had all the coal, but the Swiss had a bunch of hydropower, so they just stuck a pantograph on top of the steam locomotive and had an electric heating element in the firebox.
Shitty college stove is raising steam, not just making ramen anymore.
Why is Switzerland always so fucked vibes with this? Like with boats too, they just had a bunch of wood-fired engines because they didn't have any coal for or even oil for like lake ships.
Yeah. Or like, did they have those like weird like wood gas engine?
Yeah,
things?
yeah, 100%.
Oh, God, yeah.
And then of course lower right. They decided to take this one step further, and what if inside heating the water was just a nuclear reactor?
Yes, now we're talking.
No containment.
Yes, go on.
Yeah, with no containment, just like the crumple zone is two blokes.
You are the crumple zone, baby.
There was a fair amount of research into this in the 50s. It never went anywhere because people realized, this is incredibly stupidly dangerous.
Who didn't want to die.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Life is good, Alice.
I'm not feeling it right now, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Well, I hope your situation improves, and it's a good feeling to get back to that every human being deserves. I hope you get there.
I just want to drive the atomic train.
No, don't build it.
Just driving this thing like, do you taste metal?
No, I just said don't build it.
Well, honestly, like I ride, when I go to Center City, I ride an atomic trolley. It just has a very elaborate transmission.
Oh yeah,
yeah, because
thank you, Limerick.
because Philly is, I think about 80% of our power comes from Limerick Generating Station. So,
Damn, is it 80?
Justin, I hate to inform you that 3 Mile Island is not on wheels. It doesn't count.
Well, that's fine. We go from Limerick.
Not yet. Yeah, we get from Limerick. Yeah,
just putting a couple of
Limerick has never melted down
under a cooling tower.
Yeah, pick up Peach Bottom and roll it down the river.
Just those like bridge wheels that Alice doesn't like because it implies a non-rigid structure.
That's right. Make it stronger.
Yes.
Speaking of make it stronger, these are the strongest.
Beautiful segue.
Yes.
The
record breakers.
I'm hearing like half of the words that I say come back to me.
Great.
So this is the sort of records page. And you'll notice there's a bunch of question marks on there because with a lot of steam locomotive records, we don't really know like what was the first locomotive over 100 miles an hour. Well, if you're the stats purist, you say Flying Scotsman. If you're the American, you say 999. If you're the Brit, purist, whatever, you say City of Truro. And if you're us, we say the Atmospheric Railway.
That's right.
Yes.
And one terrified Irishman.
Yes.
Oh, fuck. Oh, jeez.
What a horrible situation here. Get me off of this.
Fiddly deep potato.
Fiddly deep potatoes.
Holy fucking shite, dude. Okay. And so, as far as what's the fastest locomotive alive, again, records say Mallard, which while it was making the record,
you know it wasn't Mallard, you fucking liar.
No, I'll get there. Hold on.
We'll get there.
Decorum. So the funny thing about Mallard is when it set this record, which William will contest, it actually melted its inside bearings.
Yeah, because it's a bitch engine for bitch people.
It's definitely the finicky, like European
sports car kind of. Yeah.
Because handmade in England European. Is just a byword for at some point the doors are gonna fall off.
Oh, you don't want a Morgan? Come on.
Published a transphobic article in the Guardian after it arrived.
And then Justin and Liam would say they think it was the GG1s because the Pennsylvania Railroad had a locomotive that was capable of that speed, but they never fully verified it because they cheaped out.
They don't need to.
They cheaped out and didn't get speedometers.
Yeah, they didn't have speedometers. Who needs them?
Yeah.
Just listen to the rhythm. That does
defeat the phrase, I paid for the whole speedometer, I'm going to use the whole speedometer.
If you have no speedometer, you don't have to pay anything.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
For none of the speedometer, and that's why I'm not obeying the speed limit.
Yeah. And so what's like the strongest engine? That's even more confusing because like the big boy, which is the one that people think of, that's just like the longest one. That's not the biggest.
Yeah. I kind of respect calling it the big boy though. That's just,
It's just a man. A man chalked the word big boy on the locomotive on the first one while it was under construction because it was in fact very large. Because I think they were going to call it the Cheyenne.
No, they were going to call it the Wasatch.
The Wasatch.
Or the 4,000 class, yeah.
I was thinking for a second they were going to call it the Sasquatch, and I was like, no, that's not right.
Seen only through like very fuzzy 8mm footage.
No, but since you mentioned it, if I ever like get around to building a live steam locomotive, I'm gonna call it the Sam Squanch class.
The Squanch class.
It's Trailer Park Boys. Moving on. So the Allegheny, allegedly had like claimed to have the highest horsepower. It was also one of the heaviest.
So big.
Yeah, the Pennsylvania Railroad Q2, I think.
Yes, the duplex. The 4464
on a rigid frame. So it's the equivalent of like a 410-4. We've trumped Elgo on the door once again. And broke past that wheel barrier. And then
I love these things.
Yeah, and then in the lower left, the Virginia Triplex, has the most tractive effort in a special running mode called simplex mode. where you turn your compound cylinders into simple expansion cylinders. So if you're going off of compound engines, it would be that one. If it's tractive effort alone and you count turbines, it's technically John Henry. Like,
Yes.
There's so many different ways that we classified steam locomotives in strength and power and size that you can't really reward them for that. They're big in different ways.
The Norfolk and Western John Henry is Philadelphia cultural appropriation too, because they spelled John Jawn.
Oh, the bastards.
Yeah.
That should be it for this slide.
Although the Norfolk and Western was majority owned by the Pennsylvania Railroad, so who can say?
And they just ran it as like a separate thing.
Yeah.
That's some E.H. Harriman shit. How did that all get broken up? Okay, we finally got to the fun part. I am sorry it has taken this long. I did not expect 3 of the 4 of us to be inebriated. So this is now finally the rapid fire bonus round. Fucked up train Extravapalooza.
7th inning stretch.
Great phrase.
Yep.
Great phrase.
Garfield.
I'm fine.
This is a picture.
Let's do it. Liam's ready, baby.
This is
Liam's ready, baby.
This is a real train. The pipe train was something I found in a book of mine. It's out of print. It's called A Locomotive Engineer's Album by George Abdil. And someone just decided to build a spark arrestor like a pipe.
Cool.
It's kind of funny.
We also have Gordon as Rudy Giuliani and Thomas as Sonic.
Okay.
No, his tail's getting trolled.
Yank his mic.
Great, let's go.
Okay, so what if you want to build a train with a stupid boiler? These are the stupidest boilers I could find. Take your pick, take a gander, comment on anything you want to see during the bonus round.
What is going on here?
Okay, so this locomotive called
L'Aigle.
You know,
The eagle. The eagle. It's called the eagle. You can tell because it doesn't look anything like a fucking eagle.
Yes.
What the goddamn hell?
So did some asshole look up in the sky, point at a fucking bird, and say, that's
what that is.
It
looks exactly the same to me.
Jesus hell.
It's very large wheels.
One of the things you notice about eagles is that they're made primarily of cast iron.
Well,
Look at the
eagles,
fucking,
notably one of the only steam-powered animals.
So for the eagle, you have a firebox that then bifurcates into a smaller firebox, and then it goes into a tube. But on top of the boiler is another boiler with no tube, and then you have like a stack in the boiler, and then you have the actual. Why would you build a train like that? And the one under it's like a fucking double-decker bunk bed firebox. What is that?
No, it's like in the Lego movie with the double-decker sofa.
That's even worse. What if someone in the middle of the upper seat has to go to the bathroom?
What's going on with this angled boiler guy? It looks like a rack railway.
So you know how a lot of locomotives like tend to explode when like the crown sheet gets exposed?
It's like a low-rided truck.
Some guys like, what if we idiot-proof this and just put the crown sheet so far under the water level that no idiot would blow it up? He claims it was for like thermal efficiency, but no, that's clearly a boiler, so idiots don't kill everyone.
And some guy up here apparently has decided if we had 3 boilers, that would be better than 1.
Yeah. What if we had a boiler that like reached out and just shoulder checked you while you're on the platform?
Look, stand behind the yellow line.
Yeah, but then it reaches out past the yellow line because they didn't plan the yellow line.
Stand even more behind the yellow line.
Backing up.
Exactly.
Backing up.
Should have got the new line ILS updated so you can see where they moved it. And then the lower middle one is, again, this is sort of a similar example to the upper middle, which is the French especially started trying to build boilers that could be bigger but still fit between the wheels. So they either stacked up double boilers or they had them in a weird pinched oval. Now, the problem with it is you don't ever want to have a pressurized vessel in anything other than a cylinder like that. And the reason is because the pressure will want to equalize and push that form into the shape of a circle with equal tension around it. So these were
so
just
if
really
they pressurize it enough, it'll become a regular boiler.
Yes, but you'll also be pushing your wheels off the axles and probably killing everyone.
This is why broad gauge was the right decision. We should have gone with Brunel gauge.
No, because the loading gauge doesn't allow a proportionally larger amount on the outside of the engine for outside cylinders. We could have this fight later. We got to keep going. It's the bonus round next slide. I cannot drop between. I cannot
Cramptons.
drop. Yeah, Le Crampton, very popular in France, invented by I guess Mr. Crampton. Is it like Jean-Pierre Crampton? Wait, no, his name's Thomas Russell Crampton. This dude was English.
Thomas Russell Crampton.
No, he was English.
I am French. I am English.
he was an Englishman, but he designed a locomotive. He was English, but he designed a locomotive that was very popular in France. Okay, that makes sense. So the deal with the Crampton is that they wanted to put the boiler as absolutely low as possible because they thought lower center of gravity would be safer at high speed.
Sure, makes sense to me.
The only way they thought to do that. So in order also to get a really big wheel for fast passenger service, they just mounted the axle behind the firebox where there's room, so you don't have to cut through the boiler or have like a double boiler or something. The problem with that is you have no weight over the back part of the train like that. The entire boiler weight's being carried on unpowered wheels. So the only way I could see the Crampton working past like a 5-year window is if they just fed all their drivers gavage to put more weight on that axle.
See here, this is imagine this big wheel just spinning. They could go very fast. They couldn't pull anything.
No.
If you yourself wanted to get somewhere and you wanted to drive the Crampton, that was fine. If you wanted to pull a passenger car, no.
That's the most cursed libertarian feature.
Everybody has their own
you
private.
Have railroads. You have railroads everywhere, but it's just
everyone has their own Crampton.
I mean, isn't that basically what happened with cars, though?
No.
Yeah, except now you have less chances to like steer and save your life.
It's kind of how early railroads work too.
You have to yell out points, and then someone on the side of the road just switches the track.
Yeah, the state-owned open access railroads, like
Still
the main line.
Nominally a thing with
like,
train operating companies in the UK too. There'll be some that just like buy the right to operate like a handful of trains.
You should probably do an episode
that's scheduled though. This is anyone can use their own locomotive on the railroad at any time. That's how the Philadelphia and Columbia Railroad worked.
You could easily do a bonus episode
train,
on
you can run it.
That, yeah. But
sorry, if you have a horse.
But yeah, that's it for the Cramptons. Next slide.
Yeah. We also got like the big Sterling
The big
locomotive.
Our friend of the podcast, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, tried to build an even bigger wheel on a bigger gauge, and so he got a 10-foot wheel, but he literally just put it on a weightless cart.
Our boy
he built the world's dumbest Ferris wheel, is what he did. With no people.
Good Lord.
But what if you want to build a stupider wheel?
The Fontaine. Yes.
So the Fontaine, in order to build the equivalent of a bigger wheel, they tried to have like almost like compound gearing, but with wheels. Which, what's the best part about gears with no teeth?
Yeah, that's not a.
They slip. Yeah,
they don't work.
Yeah. So he invented additional wheel slip. This is what he did.
Good.
You had the big wheel on top that drives a smaller wheel, which makes the big wheel on the bottom go faster, right? That's fine. That'll work.
Yeah, but that's like a gear reduction ratio of like 1.18 to 1.
Look, it'll go 70 instead of 60, assuming it's not carrying anything.
Trains need to do that. Remember, they're getting bigger. We need the Gobernador, or we won't be able to do that.
Is this the Florida East Coast Railroad?
I believe that was the Fontaine Engine Company.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was about to say, they bring this out to Key West.
That'd be funny to watch it. No, that's how you do it. The rust adds adhesion.
Yes.
Oh my God. Oh my God. We figured it out.
Key West extension. That's an episode right there.
Also, I just want to say I am Puerto Rican and I apologize for how badly I'm speaking Spanish. I cannot think straight right now.
Welcome to the club, Tom.
Yes. All right.
How you doing, Alice?
You know how FDR said when you're at the end of your rope, you tie a knot in it and hold on? That's how I'm doing it.
It's okay. They get funnier from here. I made sure to have it be a ramp up to keep. I figured we would need a fourth quarter wind, but what if you want to build an even stupider wheel than that? So in order to improve adhesion, some guy thought with this locomotive, what if instead of a circle, we make it a 118-sided polygon?
Yes.
And I just want to say,
roll for initiative.
Yeah, 118 is not the kind of word you like draw on the plans. That's the kind of number you get when you stick a bunch of squares on a wheel and you come around to the other end. I guarantee you, he put in number 117, and he was like, "Hey, bring me my calipers. We got to cut this one different."
I don't even know how you do that.
Doing train phrenology.
This is like, I don't even know how you manufacture that. Like I know how you put a wheel together and just like, I don't know, you put a blade on the thing and spin it around. How do you do a 118-sided polygon? Yeah. So every rotation you get like one big bang, you know, as well as 118 smaller bangs you also get.
Yeah, it just sounds like artillery fire the whole time. It
sounds like a machine gun.
Yeah, it's just like it's quiet and then all together delightful experience. As you're just getting pounded, like
yeah. But wait, it gets worse.
This is, if anyone ever tells you that capitalism spurs innovation, show them this slide and tell them to shut the fuck up. Because this is just
horror.
This is just pure capitalist grift. They invented some bullshit, literal fucking pyramid scheme train. And they made this stupid thing that looks kind of techno smart, and they sell it to stupid. This was like the first gadget bomb, just trying to sell some stupid idea for money that looks.
I'm so glad this has never happened since.
Luckily, we will not get there.
They built the second one 10 years after the first one.
And so they asked Angel's investors, like, hey, can you give us each $1 million to like get this idea off the ground and invest in this new technology that you're a part of and will be the future? And then they just took the money and left town.
This is good for reasons which we don't know how to explain properly.
It's good. Like looking at a cursed emoji feels good.
It's like, I don't know. I mean, if you add more wheels, it's more wheels.
More is more good.
More is,
yeah, and the more wheels there are, then the more wheels that you have.
And that's good because of reasons.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's good because you have more wheels, which is what you want, because there's wheels.
I believe
if we were all wheels, there would be 4 more wheels.
What if it was a horse?
Right.
What if the horse drove some wheels?
What if you put a bunch of wheels on a horse?
What is a leg?
Which leads me to my favorite evolutionary question: why hasn't nature evolved wheels?
Because sliding joints on blood vessels doesn't work.
Yes. Yet. Because nature's fucking stupid. Nature's fucking dumb as shit. I mean.
Also, there's stuff that doesn't have blood vessels. Where the fuck are its wheels?
Again, nature's fucking stupid.
That's right. I'm becoming a creationist now.
You got me.
I'm dumb design, not intelligent design. I think God designed everything, but he's also a fucking moron.
So y'all know how like broad gauge exists, and like standard gauge exists, and narrow gauge exists, and minimum gauge exists. What if you just kept pushing the rails together until it's just one rail? And what if you're also stupid and you want to make it with steam?
Mono means one, and rail means rail.
So these are some weird steam monorails. And the upper left one was the Boynton Bicycle Railway. It was designed to be double-decker and run through very narrow alleyways between tall skyscrapers in New York.
Hell yes. That's the kind of futurism that I want. Is getting run down by a fucking bicycle monorail.
011?
No, the 012.
No, it's the 012.
The French classification becomes the actual classification.
I guess so, yeah. And I like this. I like this with 2 boilers.
Yeah. So that was the monorail system that was in Ireland. Something cool about that actually is that they had drawbridge grade crossings. You just bring a drawbridge down over on top of the rail and drive a cart across it.
Oh my god,
it's pretty cool.
I have to lay siege to the railroad.
I like that the headlight is larger than both the boilers.
It is. Oh, that's cool. That's weird that it has like an American headlight on an Irish engine.
Oh yeah. It's this is a cultural exchange right there.
Huh. They gave us Boston, we gave them the light.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then there is probably the coolest looking thing in the thing so far is this like weird like steampunk looking like Wild West kind of steam monorail. I don't remember exactly why this failed. It just did.
I mean, probably because it was dumb.
Yeah,
But it does look fucking cool.
It does look cool. Yeah. It's like a big like pill-shaped caboose screaming at you.
Yeah, shit. I want to like make this for like City Skylines or something like that because it looks fucking dope.
I almost thought about building the next one in O scale. So what if you want to build a monorail, but you're also really fucking lazy?
I build a no rail. What I do is I build a train and it just sits there.
Well, no, it still is on a monorail, but
okay, fine. I build an atmospheric railway.
That would have probably been better than this. This is literally just a Baldwin or 040 that they put on stilts and then just took half the wheels off and pushed the other half into the center. This is I said we were going to get to this. There is an actual 020, and it is this engine.
Incredible.
The problem with this is that it was extremely heavy for wood rail with a tiny metal strap on it. And also the little tanks on the bottom where it says Bradford and Foster Brook, those were the water tanks. And so when they'd run out of water, all 3 gallons of it, then, you wouldn't have ballast down low for stability. And so it would just, start rocking.
Flop over the side.
Yep.
and keep in mind, this railroad's only about 2 miles long. On the 4th run, it just crashed through the middle and died. Or the train didn't die, but like, does being condemned and having to go to the scrappers count as death? Like before you get cut up?
I would say so.
Trains die when they go to the scrappers, and they maybe rise on the 3rd day when they're rescued. I don't know.
Okay.
What?
So what if you want?
Oh, Jesus Christ!
What if you have a train and you want to take that train up a big goddamn hill?
You get a stationary train at the top to lug it along.
Yes,
that's what I would do.
I get a bunch of large Irishmen to push
This
it.
is my vertical
This is my
boiler
army
hot
of
rod.
Seamuses.
So the first cog railway in the U.S., I believe, was I think it was the Mount Washington one because it's further east. So east is further east in America means older. But so they started with this first weird little vertical boiler engine. It has a great name. It's called Pepper Sass. And, worked pretty well up until like the last day. They threw a big party because they were going to retire it, and like the engineer who ran it was having his last day. He was going to retire as well. The cog broke and it just flew down the mountain and killed the guy.
Jesus.
That was his last day.
It was
Like
his
a retiring
Imagine like the last night watch on the Nancy, but it like sinks in protest of you.
I'm taking you with me.
Rest in peace, Stan Rogers. That would be a horrible bonus episode of Stan Rogers. And so they started building engines closer to center. These look and sound kind of goofy, but they're actually very, very cool. This tiny locomotive that's like 20 feet long generates like as much tractive effort as a Mikado, which is like pretty big freight engine.
A big 282, yes. But this is an something.
It's an 042T. And
that's what
then-
happens when you have a gear.
Yeah. Well, weirdly, the actual like wheels on the outside tracks aren't powered. They're just free to rotate. The drive rods only power the gears in the middle
Oh, nice.
because it's not one of the half on the rack, half off. It's just always on the rack. But these were actually very successful. They just look kind of scary and like crazy. And if one's named Pepper Sass and staring straight up at God, it'll probably kill you.
I can't imagine a brake failure on this would be goddamn terrifying. I
It would
mean,
be
you
very-
obviously.
It's like you have half a second to.
Everything about these is terrifying.
Why don't they have like a big ramp at the end so you don't,
What, so you ski jump after coming down 14,000 feet of hill?
No, I'm thinking like a runaway truck ramp, but it's a train.
That's how you're going to get that coffee
Yes.
to me.
Oh, that's what I should have done. Damn it.
Hurl it into orbit.
Nice
Next
and warm from re-entry. Yeah.
Next slide. So we can't talk about dumb trains without talking about the ones that are literally called steam dummies. So as trains started running actually within the city limits and down streets, people noticed the horses started to get freaked out a little bit, kind of like I am right now. But I'm glad I chose 80s star carpet for the background. This is exactly what I needed. And so they decided, okay, these horses are getting scary, or getting scared by the horses are already scary. They started getting scared by the steam locomotives. And so they said, well, clearly the horses, as we all have known for centuries, are scared of round shapes.
Yes.
They just
okay.
thought that the boiler was what was scaring them. So they hid the boiler and made it look like a little tram car. That's very
Poor
cute.
Snuffles.
That's
Poor
nice.
Snuffles thought of a round shape and died.
Horses are so goddamn dumb.
Just thinking about this like filthy, noisy abomination that comes rattling down the street, and a horse is like, I'm chill with this because it's like, got
That's
corners.
familiar, like Toby the Tram.
It gets run over by the tram train, and it's just like, oh, this is fine. At least it's not round. Then it sees a wheel right before it dies, and it's like, oh god.
You see, the mistake here is assuming horses are capable of thought.
If we can,
They're very dumb
anybody can
animals.
think. Anybody can. I think Ratatouille, historical fiction.
I need to use the restroom again. I'll be right back.
Again?
Yes.
Oh, excuse me.
Who's got a tiny girlish bladder?
We've got like 10
It's okay.
slides left. Fuck.
They go quick. Here, I'll try to go faster. Oh, where's my? God, I am sorry.
It's fine, don't worry.
Yeah, we should be able to get through this pretty quick.
Yeah, I'm sure the people will like enjoy the, hearing like us be entirely fucked from this and be very understanding and not at all call for our blood in the comment section.
Why aren't they more awake?
Oh, no.
Why do they make jokes? I've listened to this podcast. Please get
57,000
to the
years.
disaster.
Fuck off.
Well, hopefully,
Just stay on topic.
hopefully,
Kill yourself.
I would say hopefully this is a
Right.
bonus episode. Hopefully it's only just like 8,000 people and not 40,000.
I don't like thinking about the size of our audience. It gives me anxiety. It's like
read the fucking link anyway.
it's like the one fucking Wile E. Coyote looks down before he starts
I can't
falling.
imagine that
I don't want to be like
this many people follow me on Twitter, and I'm just like, it's just gonna be dick jokes, yo. It's not gonna be good. I'm not gonna give you good insight. I'm just gonna make dick jokes.
Yeah, like,
I'm so tired,
dude, half of your Twitter is like telling, like,
various Tesla stands to
I
kill
don't
themselves.
say kill yourself.
yeah, you
so I
said
won't
suck
catch a
my
ban.
ass.
Yeah, suck my ass is dehumanizing, but in a funny way, and that's what I pride myself on.
Yeah. Okay, if we have to record this again, I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah, Tom, I'm coming for you, baby.
Oh no. It's 2 against 1. That's not fair.
That's right.
She's got to
Sorry
come over
about
from-
that.
Fuck you,
In
man.
fairness, I'm very
Roz,
weak.
Roz, I'm in danger.
Are you in danger?
Go in a bottle.
Fuck yeah, piss in a cup, you pussy.
Liam's gonna kill me.
That's right.
It'd be like,
yeah, we decided if we have to record this again or like reschedule and redo it, I'm just gonna commit murder, and so is Liam.
okay. So I mean, I don't know that. Well, I mean, the Trailblazers have pissed live on the podcast. So
yeah, go for it. Let her rip.
Well, here we are.
Justin, we weren't gonna like do that for the bathroom break. It was because I'm a wreck.
Oh, I don't know. I think you're doing pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, fireless locomotives.
So
let's go.
Yeah, so fire is dangerous. What if we make a steam engine without fire? So some of them were just powered on compressed air, like the one in the upper right, which is 3 feet tall. So I don't know how you crawl into that. I'm serious. It's
like
like
very tiny locomotive.
It's like 3 or 4 feet tall. Yeah, you'd have to like just huddle in there.
Oh, that's not that roof isn't to go over your head. That covers your knees.
Yes.
You got to like Slav squat in the
I
cab.
assume you're working in a mine or something on that.
You're just like lying prone out the back with your legs dangling across the rails. Just
it's one of those old-fashioned mines. They got like a 11-year-old kid, throwing the switches for you, like, and he has your life in your hands, in his hands.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you're in a mine, you're also an 11-year-old kid, so like you can probably fit in.
Well,
there.
that's why they didn't give them a fire. You don't want kids to play with fire. You give them a compressed air locomotive.
That's right.
No, they could die of black lung, but God forbid they ever see a match.
Mm-hmm.
Can't let these kids see the light. They'll get addicted to it. Do not, my friends, get addicted to vitamin D.
So, despite looking goofy, some of them actually were successful in certain industrial situations, like the semi-streamlined one for the Chesapeake and Ohio in the corner.
For where you don't want a fire, like, I don't know, explosives or whatever.
If you're running like a coal power plant, if you're running like something, it's something where you don't want to throw sparks off. And I love the streamlined fireless locomotives because it's the goofiest thing imaginable, because these things could maybe hit 15 miles an hour, but it's like so many of them were streamlined for some reason. It's extremely entertaining.
Cool, Raz.
Yeah, because there's
it's the equivalent of putting a shit ton of fiberglass on your car.
Yeah,
I removed
it's
put a carbon.
I donked my locomotive.
Yeah, this is the Stingray Corvette of
yeah.
You can do this, Alice. You can do this.
You get
Alice.
under there. It's just no, I can't. No, I can't. You get under there and it's all just shot through with rust.
Yes. When you were the locomotive.
Close.
And then the funniest one is one that was built in England for the London Underground. This is called Fowler's Ghost. And he said, well, instead of fire, what if I run this train off of some very warm brick?
So he made a charcoal grill.
What if I make a pizza oven on wheels? In fairness, I respect the being the first guy to go, wait, you're running steam trains underground? Are you insane?
So somewhere between Donner Pass and London Underground is where you draw the line and start rooting for people's lungs.
Well, I mean, they ran steam on the London Underground. Like the last time they did it was like 2013, I think.
Mm-hmm. I know, but I mean, I appreciate that. Like to everybody else, that seemed totally normal, and then there's one guy is like, "You're gonna what?
Let
me do the pizza thing instead."
Let's try not to asphyxiate people. You big fucking pussy. Mm-hmm. Listen, people got to get to work.
Yeah, what is you gay or something,
fellas? Is it gay to not asphyxiate?
What are you trying to do? Not have a station filled with smoke? What are you trying to see? Other men?
I believe you should roll coal straight through the Met.
Yeah.
And so the problem with filling the engine with a bunch of warm brick instead of a fire on a coal grate is that you can't drop the fire if there's an emergency because the bricks are all stuck to.
Just take bricks out.
Well, the thing is,
just take them out.
What have we said is the Achilles heel of the steam locomotive?
I was not paying attention.
Water pump.
Yep. And so the feed water pump died on this thing, and it wasn't able to pump water in, and it almost exposed the crown sheet. and they had to play hot potato with a bunch of kiln brick.
Cool.
I thought that the boiler would only explode if you added more water to it.
No, it's just if the metal is hot enough because there's not water to suck the heat away, it will just get to a point where it becomes malleable, and the pressure is what pushes it in.
Ah, that'll do it. Okay, yeah. I thought it was like something like you had to add more water to the boiler to cause the explosion. But I guess yeah, I mean, it just becomes too hot. Okay, yeah. So
next,
yes.
So these are
weird shit.
Yeah, this is just variety
real
hour.
Weird shit.
So these are all like some weird form of lever crank or alternate design.
Hell is this shit?
Mussies.
Is that the fucking Acme boxing glove out in front?
Yes. So this was a patent for the safety pilot, which would, you're driving along, you see a stalled train in front of you that you're going to hit. Your train says newt. Yeah, it says newt newt. And then the thing comes out. It does the pingu thing.
It holds a sign that says and the train blinks twice.
Yeah.
And then I guess you just punch the other train away.
I imagine the idea is that it absorbs the impact.
It works like buffers, yeah.
But
except it's attached to your train.
It's a super buffer that makes a funny noise.
No, you shoot the train in front of you off the track like with a pool cue.
Wasn't there a concept for like if trains could just ride up on top of the other train?
Yeah, but before the anti-climber was the pro climber.
It's the pro climber.
Yeah. There we go. That's the energy. I like that. We're doing good. This is a good slide.
If only two of us had slept more than like ever in the last week, we could have kept this the whole way through.
Right, baby.
No, I was just getting depressed earlier. That was on me. But someone also had the idea, what if we build something that is, I don't remember what exactly it's called, the upper left, where it's sort of like a half crank rather than a full rotation crank. It's like an opposed lever drive. Yeah, that.
I can't. I have no idea how this mechanism works. I don't want to know. I don't want to know how this mechanism works.
Just get in the shed at the back and fucking mind your own business.
The funny thing is, whatever happened with it, it ended up getting in a wreck because the lever drive was so ungainly. And then it was rebuilt as like a literal incarnation of Chuffy from Banjo-Tooie.
Oh,
like, that's just.
Explain this one on the right to me.
The monster and Amboy monster.
So someone did a model of this for Transport Fever too, and I commend them for having the damn gall.
I think
to figure out how this mechanism works.
Well, the reason it looks so weird also is because it has that earlier like V-hook or gab kind of valve gear, and that's just sort of how crazy it was.
Where the hell is is that the foot plate up at the left we're seeing?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh boy. Okay. And
oh jeez.
This is like
my mind's trying to grapple with it, and I'm just getting nowhere.
You see that spur gear between drivers 2 and 3? This thing's semi-articulated.
Of course it is.
The reason they call it the monster.
Why did I say that like a junior high school student spreading gossip?
Yeah, and it's articulated.
I heard she's articulated.
So that was why they went with this weird crank design, is because they like had to deal with that articulation of it, and just it didn't work. They tried to rebuild it.
I too have also had to go with a weird crank design because of the strange articulation.
Yeah, I remember. This was the fucked up rebuild slide. Okay, because they rebuilt it in this 460, and it was still it kind of got worse because they added more to it, and the more is terrible.
The more exposed moving parts there are, the better your locomotive is.
That's right. That's right.
Just make the mechanism more complicated and it's better.
Yeah. And then, as probably a reaction
What
to
is
this,
this belt drive here?
no, that's a lever
Something's-
crank.
Is that a lever crank?
It's a lever
Oh.
crank, but it doesn't give any mechanical advantage
Oh.
because they're both on the same end of the crank.
It's like a watch complication. It's just there to be cool.
Oh, the
Yeah,
more
this
you look
one
at
actually,
it, the more you
it,
find.
it actually tells you the altitude or some bullshit like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
this tells you what day of the week it is.
You don't have to switch between time zones anymore.
It tells you what day of the week it is, but like in the French Revolutionary calendar, actuates a mechanism that says today is the day of saltpeter.
What happened to Sugar Peter? Oh, that was good. That was good.
There's no sugar, Peter,
I'll
Liam.
see you in
That was a
court,
joke.
Liam.
God damn you.
Yeah, that's how I season my steaks, is salt and sugar every time.
Caramelized steak. Just dumped a bunch of sugar on it.
I wonder if that actually.
What is this? This locomotive looks sane. What's happening here?
It's actually very stupid as like a reaction to these horrifying locomotives that have rods and mechanisms. They said, what if instead of building the complicated mechanisms, we just have the cylinders tilt back and forth? It didn't work.
I don't like that. Next slide.
So-
I am just expecting the next slide to be one of like a cross section where inside the wheels there's just two guys running.
No, it gets not that crazy, but crazy in different ways.
What am I looking at here?
Upper left.
Okay.
So that weird smokestack that looks like another dome, that's a primitive feed water heater, which actually isn't the weirdest part of this engine because I think friend of the podcast, Interurban Era, informed us that those front and back wheels are actually made of paper.
What?
like apparently,
I don't like that.
apparently
What?
it's just like paper stock that is glued together and formed into some sort of building material.
This
It's
is
like
my cardboard locomotive.
Yeah,
Paper mache?
it's like the land version of like the Pykrete aircraft carriers. It's just they try to build wheels out of paper for trains. The one immediately next to it is funny because they had a narrow gauge locomotive they wanted to convert to standard gauge, and rather than actually doing the work, they just picked up the narrow gauge engine and plopped it down on the standard gauge. Like on another
Just
half of the
add
engine.
bigger wheels. It's fine. It's
Yeah,
fine.
And then next to that is
Like Master
Yeah.
Blaster.
And next to that's another one of those weird, like half crank engines. Didn't work well. In the very middle is another tilting cylinder design, which that looks wrong. I don't
I
think that'll
understand.
work.
I look at this and I immediately understand how it works, and I hate it.
And then the one on the left was another attempt at semi-articulation. The one underneath it was someone
I
thought,
don't like that linkage.
no, it didn't work.
What if we glued two locomotives together? That would be better, right?
Yeah, what if I want a fairly, but I just have two switchers?
And what is happening here?
This is, remember how the Pikes Peak Railway engines were only for cog railways?
Yeah.
This is a locomotive for operation on a half cog railway. So, like, some parts it's worked just on the outside rails, some parts with the cog. The weird, tiny, like, mini-me version of the valve gear there is for the cog rails. So you
Why
can
not
turn that
just
on
have-
or off. Yeah.
Why not just have the cog on the axle?
Because depending on, like, what part of the gear teeth is catching versus the wheel diameter, you could cause excessive wear to both.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. That's it for this
Why
slide. Next one.
Camelbacks.
So this is an engine so stupid, it asks the question of, what if we built a steam locomotive where if it breaks, you're getting an 800-pound forged iron rod right through the middle of your body?
That is my
Hey, don't
fetish.
threaten me with a good time. That's right.
So These.
This is, correct me if I'm wrong, we've seen a cab forward. This is a cab middle.
This is a cab middle, yeah.
Midships cab.
Make the firebox is bigger.
Mm-hmm.
No need for visibility for the firemen.
Yeah, firemen hated working on this engine. Engineers hated work. Everybody hated it. They didn't outlaw it until I think it was 1927. They stopped the building of additional ones.
Yeah, but the Jersey Central kept using it because they were so good.
Yeah, they used them into the 1950s.
Yeah, they were just, because, you had such a huge firebox, you could raise so much steam that it was like, yeah, just fucking go. Especially when you need especially for commuter trains, what the Jersey Central obviously had because, New York City, so on and so forth. It was like, you can just accelerate like hell with one of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And you were burning anthracite on these.
Yep, which needed a larger grate because it burns slowly.
And it's just burning in front of you and behind you?
Well, one or the other, depending on if you had the good job, which is bad, or the bad job, which is worse.
Because those two guys don't need to talk to each other. Ever.
Never, no.
Yeah, they never have, actually.
Good engine for introverts.
It's such a odd couple,
tape
halfway down the middle of the apartment marking outside.
I'm just a small bean who has anxiety. And I also want to throw my back out. Just shoveling anthracite into this giant firebox. 2 tons an hour or some bullshit.
There is in fact something dumber than this. Next slide. Alice, you might recognize this one.
Hold on a second. Okay, so run it past me. You know what? Explain this to me.
So I know this looks like just standard modern London Underground stock, on remdesivir or whatever that steroid cocktail was.
Yeah, whatever they shoot Trump up with to make him not die of the coronavirus.
Gone off that fen. Whatever killed Anna Nicole Smith, that's what they have Trump on.
Oh, dear.
Folks, the Northern Line. It's great. Folks, I've been to Cockfosters and
this is why they tell you to mind the gap, is because there's now 12 feet in the air and vertical.
Climbing up a ladder to get on the train.
So this locomotive
that's just a low-level platform in the United States, actually.
So this locomotive was big, it was stupid. What happened is it's like an internal steam boiler in the center part of that. And then that runs to, I believe, a chain drive, which goes into the front and back. And the main thing, it was big. It was just really difficult to maintain. It was meant to replace that tiny little tank engine in the corner. And so, literally, Bullied allegedly built it to replace the Drummond M7 tanks, which are these tiny, Victorian era, based on a Victorian design, little tiny tank engines on, secondary routes and light rail. And so he wheels out this big monster truck on steam.
It's like a Class 58, but Truckosaurus version.
It's a steam Class 58. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And the weird thing is, if you're a fireman, again, with shitty secondary cab placement, you don't get one of the end places. You have to be in a little side door in the middle, and it's hot enough that a lot of people thought they were going to be cooked alive on them.
We genuinely got closer every day to just putting a guy in the asbestos suit that we saw earlier in the firebox while it was running.
More or less, yeah.
Labor productivity, folks. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Listen.
That's right.
If you have to put on an asbestos suit, it's fine.
Sometimes you have to just go and work every day in a big grill on the inside of it.
Listen, in order to power socialism, you have to go work inside this volcano.
Well, I have good news. The bonus round is done.
Is it like a fun volcano? No, you have to work inside the lava.
You know,
Not like a James Bond volcano.
So we did it. We got through the thing.
Oh, we done. Thank God. Okay, bye.
We got through the bonus round.
I would just call it here. This is
we got a couple more. We can go through them quick.
Okay.
We're just here to look at this nice Boston, Maine locomotive
power
here.
cleanser.
So cool. Alice's name is just fuck you.
Do you not notice that before now?
Yeah.
That's the energy that I went into this with.
I'm so tired.
I've my eyelids feel like they're melting, dude.
Welcome to the Well, There's Your Problem work camp where
yeah, we repent of all of our previous crimes against Justin.
Except for me. I don't repent for shit.
So there were
you will podcast until you are happy.
Oh no.
The podcast will continue until morale approves.
And yet you didn't want to do podcast boxing.
These were
we will do a shitty meme that says, "No, this is podcast boxing," but it's me fighting you. Somebody Photoshop that.
Fight me first. Just fucking get me right between the eyes so I don't have to be awake for this anymore.
So these were attempts by modern companies to try to do like modern steam projects. The top one is a weird steam engine with like a diesel cover on it.
I always appreciate a chassis livery, but
yes.
From American Coal Enterprises.
That was during the energy crisis. They were like, oil is expensive. What if we went back to coal?
Yeah.
They're not making
reject modernity, embrace tradition.
And then there was also the 5AT and the 8AT modern steam projects in Britain. Those never got off the ground. There was an attempt to make...
they're just entirely like, not even boomer nostalgia, but like pre-boomer nostalgia drives.
It's literally just like a BR
what
standard
if we just
5.
what if we just had a standard 5 back like you remember? Wouldn't that be cool? Please, can we please?
And also the 8F, because they had to have 2 and then not build either.
Yeah.
And then they were going to do a similar modern steam sort of like optimization with 3463. That fell through and just got downgraded to just cosmetic restoration only. And now they're going to start.
That was the Coalition for Sustainable Rail, right? They were trying to figure out like, how do we run historic locomotives with more eco-friendly fuels? And they were like trying to do like torrefied biomass as opposed to coal, right?
No. There's an easy answer to this, and that's that big coal tender.
Yeah.
You take all the coal out and you put in a nuclear reactor.
Oh,
good idea, Alice.
No.
Yeah,
that's what you do.
No, it's surrounded by water though. That's the shielding.
Mm-hmm. It's fine.
That's also a feed water heater as well.
I think we're onto something here, lads. What I've done is I've made the steam engine sustainable again.
That's so
smart.
All you have to do is put like a small nuclear reactor in there.
And another one they're doing is the T1 locomotive truss. This is the big Pennsylvania Railroad duplex. They're like, well, let's build another one. Let's see if it can actually break the record. And they're surprisingly far along with it. It looked like this is an impossible project when it started. They have the whole boiler finished.
Good lord.
Wow.
They have the frame ordered. It's actually going to happen.
Yeah, like the boiler being finished is like the hardest part of any steam restoration. The fact that I'm scared. That's too fast.
We're gonna hit 150.
Well,
and then of course, in Britain they had the A1 peppercorn trust. They built the Tornado just from scratch.
Yep, it runs. It's cool.
Yes,
it went 100 miles an hour recently.
Mm-hmm.
Oh damn!
Yeah, for certification on the main line.
It put Jeremy Clarkson in this place.
They've got an AWS in there too, which is the funniest thing to me. It's just like with your no visibility, you now have a little bolted on panel that will tell you the signal ahead.
There was some incident in like 2008 that kind of prompted that, where a Heritage steam locomotive did a good old SPAD, signal past at danger. And they're like, oh shit, we should probably equip these locomotives with modern safety devices. Which is something we haven't done in the United States. Instead, the people who own the locomotives are like, I'm not putting safety devices on there. I'm just going to keep it in a shed forever. So, hopefully they'll all die off soon. And then...
This is recent steam that has been running in the global south. So the guy in the upper left is a really cool dude. His name is Livio Dante Porta. He is an Argentinian railway engineer who has come up with pretty much most of the modern science of steam locomotives after dieselization. So he developed stuff like the now very common Lempore exhaust, which uses, again, like sort of the convergent divergent cone science in order to improve drafting. He's also designed something called the cyclonic firebox, which is circular in profile and basically creates like a corkscrew of air, which allows more complete combustion. Then, of course, there's the Red Devil, which was a South African 484. It's classified as Class 26 is built from the engine below it, which is a Class 25 condenser. And the tender, the reason it's so big and has all those radiator grills is because they had to expunge a lot of heat from the water in order to reuse it. And in order to get around problems with drafting, they installed basically like a tiny little jet engine in the stack. No. And it just sucks the draft through. And they can go like 800 kilometers between water stops. It's kind of impressive.
Hey, condensing tender, that's like a smart one. Either that or you put a water pan in, but water.
Yeah, it's a backpack for a train. It carries stuff.
Fucking love these things. They're great. It's just the Red Devil concept is absurd. What?
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 In the lower left is a Garrett locomotive. And this is basically two locomotives back to back.
Sleep. Oh, Jesus.
My ass is falling asleep. I can't
get up.
Listen, the ass circulation is an essential health and safety concern for the podcaster.
I'm gonna sue Roz over unsafe.
That's right. This is this is a culture of unsafe work practices.
I'm gonna OSHA your ass to hell, Rozjak.
Yeah. I have no ass and I must poop.
And when I expressed my concerns to Foreman Rosniak, he mocked me in vulgar terms.
So the Garrett class of locomotive built by Bayer Peacock, as I think Justin said earlier. It's a type that was very common in Africa because it had a light axle loading to run on the very light rail. Then the engine in the lower right is a Chinese QJ, which is one of the last mass-produced steam locomotives built. I believe up to 1989 they were building them.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. No, I thought it was like 2003.
They were running on mainline service until 2006, I believe.
They were okay, yeah, that makes sense. QJ, they were originally called, I think it's King G, which is anti-imperialism.
Hell yes.
Very cool train.
Yes.
Also, one of the only 210-2s that were built that didn't have the weird hunting oscillation problem that other 210-2s tended to have. Next slide.
Wait, which is this one up here?
Oh, the Streamline one?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's the Argentina. That's a 4-cylinder compound that is, I think, the only locomotive port that got to completely design on its own, rather than doing work for like other existing engines.
I see. This is an interesting one. This was never built, but it was like a concept that. So a man named Luigi Coloni, right? He's a German guy who changed his name so it would sound
What?
Italian.
Excuse me? What if a German guy were Italian?
What if a German guy was
What if
Italian?
a German guy were pretending to be Italian?
I know,
Is
right?
this going to be the Giuseppe Hitler bit again, or?
Kind of does look like it. Like, yeah.
What if Hitler, but with a handlebar mustache? It's a concept locomotive he designed for the Baikal-Amur main line, which I believe was started under Stalin, canceled under Khrushchev, and restarted under Brezhnev.
Wait, does he have a decal of his face on the tender?
Yes.
Yes. This is supposed to be a coal dust fired steam locomotive for the Baikal-Amur main line. Yeah, the Baikal-Amur main line, of course, the Soviet Union built a second Trans-Siberian Railroad, which was farther away from China after the Sino-Soviet split.
Totally enclosed cab up front. I like that a lot.
I know, right? One of the things is, like, of course, the wheels are angled, right? So combined with hammer blow from the side rods, that's gonna not good. That your gauge is gonna get wider.
It's a gauge widening train.
It's a gauge widening train. Yes.
Congratulations, you invented a way to clip through the earth.
Yeah, you get to like some real Kerbal physics where you just like clip through the ground, spin at 500,000 miles an hour, and then shoot off into space.
This does look like a KSP build.
It really does.
So anyway, the Soviets wound up going with diesel locomotives. And then real steam of the future.
Yeah, like everyone's had crazy, wacky ideas of what steam railroading would be like in the future. You know, is it going to be these, polished chrome trains or whatever? Are they going to be flying? Or are they going to be like a Futurama joke? But the truth is, like, steam locomotives in the future are the most simple and reliable ones that were running before. Like, this is Sandaoling, which is a coal mine in Mongolia. And one of the main things about this is it's, just one of those places way out in the remote middle of nowhere. It's probably cheaper just to burn the coal to get it out of the mine rather than just importing in diesel from like hundreds of miles away. So it actually does make, like operating sense. And weirdly, the
only big steam operation left in the world, I believe.
I believe so as well, because I've been looking. A lot of South African railways used to run steam. Recently, some Botswanan copper railways did, but those have been phasing it out. The Darjeeling Himalaya Railway, another last holdout for it, has been converting to diesels.
I don't think that Darjeeling Railway is big steam.
It's still in like a regular service, though. It's not like a tourist
that's true,
one. Yeah. Like it does like regular meter stuff, but the thing is, like, this is just sort of what was going to make it, just the stuff that could be built reliably and take abuse and just handle like the loads enough to be easily maintained. And I can't talk right now.
They do like a push-pull operation here, right?
Yeah.
They just go back and forth, and it's like, okay, just run the locomotive in reverse for 10 miles. That's fine.
They just zigzag up and down the sides of the mine. But yeah, this is what steam will be in the future. They've tried to replace these basically every year since I think 2016, and somehow they still just keep running. Like the fleet went from 10 or 12 down to 8, and then recently I think down to 4. But there's still probably going to be a couple of these running like years from now.
I found a write-up about this that I was just skimming through, and there's a caption here that is pretty sad. There's a photo of one of these going past the skyline at Sandaoling. A train peacefully passes the ruins of a Uyghur mosque in the Nanquan area of the old town of Sandaoling. The mosque has since been demolished. So,
oh no.
Yeah,
that's gone poorly.
Yeah. Gonna outlast a lot, huh?
Well, I mean, that's the next slide. Is something Tom has painted.
Mm,
Yeah,
the end. Oh, that's
the
great.
end.
Yeah. This is well, I guess the steam trains didn't demolish the mosque.
That's a minion of Canada. God damn it.
What? No, that's the next slide.
I know. I'm looking at it.
Anyway, this is the part where Tom,
I
you
forgot
do
there's
a
one more.
Patreon where you do paintings, right? You should do a commercial.
I don't want to do a commercial.
Do a commercial, Tom.
Do the
I
commercial,
just sat
Tom.
through 3 fucking hours of this.
Just
3 hours and 6 minutes. Do a goddamn commercial.
Do it. Give Tom your money.
Oh, this is the
He will
part where
paint
like
pictures.
this is the part where Arlie Ermy sticks a donut in Gomer Pyle's mouth, and all the others have to do push-ups.
Oh God, he's gonna come and shoot us all. Yeah.
No.
I am in a world of steam.
Yeah,
right.
this has been the world of Steam, and
Yes.
way too late to have done this.
Oh,
I'm sorry to everyone. I'm sorry to myself.
Oh boy.
Fuck yourself. Go fuck
Justin,
yourself.
what did you put in the last one?
Fuck you, Tom. I'm very tired.
Justin, what's over there?
What's over here? Well, I figure. Okay, so number one, Tom Coletti does art. You can see
I meant
here.
the Minions thing you did.
Yeah, well, no, I was gonna do the commercial for you
Oh,
because you were too tired to do so. Tom Coletti does art. You can go to his Patreon. You can get some art. You can commission him to do art. The art is good. You should buy the art. And also does various other things. He's a very talented and entertaining man. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the final slide, which is the Minion of Canada.
Nope. No, not doing this.
Yes, that's the so we're ending. The Minion of Canada. I've seen this locomotive.
Same. I was with you.
All
All
Go to
right.
Expo Rail.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. It's over.
Yeah.
Are we
We're
done?
done.
Are we done?
I think
Are we
we're
done?
done.
Are we
We're
done?
done.
Goodbye.
We're done.
Fuck.
Yeah,
Fuck.
we're
Fuck
done.
off.
We're done.
Good. Bye. Yes.
Bye, Alice.
Fuck you. I'll see you for the next one when I've actually slept and I'm back to
my
like being
God.
able to be entertaining instead of doing 3 hours of.
I was
Trust me. However mad you think I am, I'm madder at myself because I'm supposed to be entertaining, and instead I've just been a miserable piece of shit.
2 a.m. your time. Go to bed, Alice.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
Fuck you. Bye.
Fuck you,
Good
bye.
night.
Good night.
All right, I'm stopping this recording.